cares about Palestine, and Hamas doesn't care so much about climate change anymore, not so fashionable anymore. But they always claim that every bit of snow or every bit of a heat wave is something to do with climate change. So why don't we do that? Going to start at the end of next month. That's just a trial. That would, though, be the equivalent of just 2,600 returns a year, which is just basically 1 in 17. Sorry, a week. Yeah, returns a year. Sorry, it would just be equivalent to 1 in 17 of those who actually turn up every week. I'm not quite sure that's going to put much of a dent in the, let's check, 40,000 people who've arrived since Labour took power a year ago. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Will this deal actually work? How bad a deal do you think Keir Starmer can actually sign? Do you think he's going to give away his firstborn as part of this deal? Because that's the level of his deal making. I'd love to hear your reaction to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message free on X, of course, and on our YouTube page. We're also going to be talking about a speech that Kemi Badenoch is making a little bit later. The Tory leader is going to speak around 12:30 today. She's going to be warning that Britain faces becoming a welfare state with an economy attached due to the country's rapidly expanding benefits bill. Also, analysts from the think tank at the Centre for Social Justice, they found that living on sickness benefits will very soon pay £2.5 grand more than a minimum wage job. Is it any wonder why these numbers are burgeoning? Plus, 4 families whose children were injured in the Southport attack last year have been giving evidence to the public inquiry that was launched yesterday. One of the mothers, whose 7-year-old daughter was stabbed, and this is mind-blowing, 33 times during the rampage by Rudy. She said the little girls fought alongside one another and deserved the truth and deserve an apology. And I have to say that evidence, we'll talk about that a little bit later, it was just extraordinary in terms of what that little girl had to go through, being stabbed, cowering, holding onto other children, trying to protect them on the stairwell, stabbed some 13 times before she had actually managed to get down the stairs, and her mother having to watch CCTV footage of her daughter 7-year-old, getting to the door at the bottom of the stairs, getting out of the building, and then being dragged back in by the killer, and then stabbed some 20 times more. Incredibly, she is still alive, but obviously with life-changing injuries. The heroism of those children and what they've gone through. Whenever people talk about Rudy, who murdered 3 girls, it's really important we don't forget the other 8 girls who were also stabbed, and some with life-changing injuries, 2 adults as well, but also the other, 10 or so other children who were there and had to live with those awful memories. And good God, what the parents have gone through as well. We're going to talk about all of that. And joining me for the chat throughout the show is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Good morning once again to you. We are the Pink Twins today.
Exactly.
Feeling summery, enjoying it. And of
Going
course,
bright.
When it's lovely and summery and nice, lovely smooth seas, great day for a boat ride. You showed me a lovely picture, a little boat ride you did with your mates, a little bit of a little jaunt the other day. Could have got a dinghy, would have been cheaper, 1,500 quid, apparently. Say what you like about capitalism.
My mate
Competition
owns
works.
the boat.
Oh, so it didn't cost you a thing.
Didn't cost
Well
it,
played.
yeah.
You should go and just start ferrying migrants. You can make a lovely living. There's loads of money to be had. Anyway, for some reason, best beknownst to himself, Keir Starmer is under the illusion that a deal he's going to do today, we believe, with Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who's been here it's the 3rd day of his visit to the UK. Red carpet rolled out, best cutlery cleaned at Windsor Castle, all bonhomie and lovely, speech in Parliament, everything. Keir Starmer's under the illusion that he's going to do a deal which is going to stop the boat, smash the gangs. Not sure how it does that, but it's going to be a 1-in, 1-out deal. Why we'd want 1 in return for the 1 out is beyond me, but apparently that's the plan. But we're looking at a trial being set up, which would mean just 50 Channel migrants being returned to France, deported to France. I'm going to go, good luck with that, because we'll see what the human rights lawyers make of that. That would be for the trial. It would be the equivalent of just 1 in 17 of those actually arriving in a normal week these days. We're told, OK, it could expand, and that this would deter people from actually making the journey. Your face is a picture, by the way, at this point. Do you think it's going to work, Philip?
No.
Moving on.
I had to recheck my maths. I was never very good at maths. But I went
better
through
at it than Keir Starmer is.
And 50 in, So we send 50 back to France, and they send us 50 back again.
I'll get the calculator on my phone now. Hold on a moment. No, it doesn't.
So that means that we've got the same number that had come in beforehand. So we're getting 1,250-ish a week. So we're still growing by that number. And this is a good deal. Oh, and by the way, that then means that to find those other 50, we have to find someone proving they've got relatives in the UK, and therefore processing them. And their identity documents will have to magically just appear for all that to happen. Well, why don't we just process them and refuse them in Calais, and everyone gets processed in Calais? If they don't get processed there, they don't get in. And we then don't have people crossing the channel.
But except we still would, because people who wouldn't get through on that system would still have an urge to go the boat. The theory behind this, I get why they think this might work. They're wrong, but I get it. Okay, so you've got this idea again. Everyone. Same for the Rwanda scheme. Same for this scheme. This idea that if you come over here, but you've got a good chance of basically not being able to stay here, it's not worth your while to pay. It used to be £5,000, now it's about £1,500 to come over on the boats. They're basing that on the Australia scheme, where basically you never set foot on Australian soil, end of, nothing to discuss, and you will never do so. The reason why that worked is because the reason why that worked was because it literally meant that you never set foot on Australian soil, and they didn't, and the boat stopped. It took a couple of months, that was it, and the boat stopped, end of, nothing to discuss. A longer bit of sea and ocean to cover, fair enough. The reason why I thought Rwanda wouldn't work, because they were never going to deport, the 120,000 backlog to Rwanda. It wasn't going to happen, and at the end of the day, it's about the odds. People who are going to be travelling from, Eritrea or Afghanistan or any other basket case country, war-torn or economic migrants, the amount of money and the risks you take physically to actually get to Libya, to then get the boat across, and then get across all the borders in Europe to get to Calais and paying the people smugglers. The point of that, at that point, you're not, and the risk of crossing the biggest shipping lane, busiest shipping lane in the world, you're not then going to suddenly say, oh, but I've got a 1 in 17 chance of being sent back. It's not worth my while. I'll head back to my village in Eritrea. That's not going to actually put people off. But I'm sure Downing Street would say, but this is just a trial. It's going to be much bigger scale. But this is the problem. We're saying, well, we're going to take, as you say, other people, the asylum seekers who are eligible. I don't understand why someone who is already in a safe country like France feels the need desperately to leave France. They're already not our problem. If Europe want to have open borders, that's up to them, not my problem, thank you, as a British taxpayer. And I don't see why, because they've got an uncle living in Leicester or a second cousin in Leicester, that they should be able to come over. And by the way, they won't come over on their own. They'll be bringing their husband or wife, their 4 kids, grandma, grandpa, dad, brother, sister, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, uncle, second cousin once removed. We will have 15 people for every one that we deport.
And they've just opened another business line for the organised crime gangs, because the organised crime gangs are going to go rent a relative. And here's the paperwork. Ta-da. Ta-da. And therefore it's not smashing the gangs, it's enabling the gangs with more ways to make money out of these individuals who, some of them are desperate, some of them are being pushed in deliberately to disrupt us. And that's most of them.
Most are economic migrants. That is the reality.
Most are economic migrants, yeah.
But it's interesting that Macron said earlier this week, 1 in 3 of those who are arriving in Europe want to come to the UK. Well then, surely it would be in his interests to I've always said this, it's in French interest to try and stop these people leaving on the basis they won't be going to France. France, they make it quite inhospitable for people. But the idea that, A, Macron could stop the boats tomorrow if he wanted to. And B, he as Liz Truss rightly identified, he is foe, not friend. He's been punishing the British people for a democratic vote for the last 9 years. He's a game player, but my worry is he is a better deal maker than Keir Starmer. I was saying on the show yesterday, and it's totally true, genuinely, we'll end up paying Mauritius for this deal. Yeah,
but the other thing, and this is where Macron is right, he says there's too much of a pull factor, because the UK just rolls over and goes, tickle my tummy, yes, you can stay. We need to get deterrents to turn around and mean that when people come in, they don't get put in hotels, they get put in a tent in a field. Yeah. That's the same as they were in
I think
Calais.
It needs to be internment camps. I think we're in internment camp territory. You go into an internment camp, you're in basic rations. rations.
They don't get pocket money. They don't get phones given to them.
You can't go and work as a Deliveroo rider.
Exactly. The charities that are giving them all of this stuff are told to go away.
By the way, those charities aren't funded by public donations. No. They're largely funded by taxpayers' money. Most of these charities, that's the weird thing. We're actually encouraging it. Yeah, or Russian money. Do you know what I find fascinating? Do you remember the Bibi Stockholm? Yeah. Do you remember that massive big fuss about
Which wasn't good enough for
how
migrants?
Outrageous it was to put migrants on there. Well, apparently the Royal Navy is set to house sailors on a barge that looks remarkably similar to Bibi Stockholm. Yep. I tell you what, I bet the human rights lawyers are all queuing up to make a case to get them off, get those sailors off, aren't they? Absolutely queuing up.
The Sans Vitesse, which is painted in dazzle colours.
I have to say, the painting like a psychedelic zebra.
Exactly.
It's quite a look.
Yes, it's interesting, and they're going to put that.
But the same with the army barracks.
Yeah.
Good enough for our servicemen and women, apparently. Not good enough for some migrant from some basket case country who's here illegally. Yeah. If I tell you the other thing I think is fascinating about this, if this government is saying, no, we're going to return people, are they not accepting de facto that these people are not legitimate asylum seekers? In which case, why have they been afforded the rights of asylum seekers when they aren't?
They're not, and this is where the government, the gangs haven't been smashed. There's nothing being done to try and deal with the numbers that we've got in this country. The growing feeling of resentment is going to cause problems, and the government is just not listening to that.
I have to say, as the years go by and the numbers mount up and the costs mount up and, frankly, the criminality mounts up, I am becoming increasingly militant on this. And I think I've spoken to a lot of people, card-carrying Labour Party members who would have considered them. You'd definitely, if you met them, you'd go, oh, these people are totally full-on, Starmerites, who are now like, I'm done with this now. Yeah. Put them all on a boat, send them back. I'm done with this. And people, I think people are now increasingly militant about this. And I think Keir Starmer is insane if he thinks that this is going to fly with the British people.
No, he's doing nothing. The 50 as a trial is nothing. He doesn't get it.
But again, also a trial. How long's a trial going to be? No, I need like 1,000 a day being sent back.
It'll be as long as Macron wants it to be. And he's just playing with it. He's going, yes, I've had a nice dinner. It's been a good visit. We'll give you a little bit of a sop. There you are.
That's
right.
all it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I have a funny feeling you feel strongly about this too. I tell you what, I'd particularly like to hear from you if you think this is a good plan. There must be one of you. You might have tuned in by accident. You were trying to tune into, I don't know, Lib Dem radio. You made the wrong call. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts, whatever they are, on this and any of the other topics. Let's also talk about, before we go to a break, again, this is not a surprise. The living on sickness benefits will soon pay £2.5 grand a year more than a minimum wage jobs. So what a surprise that people go, it's not worth going to work. Now, a lot of people, the great and the good, who go, oh, well, I get so much enjoyment from my work and so much status and in whatever I do. Well, actually, a lot of people have really rubbish jobs that aren't fun. They've got a rubbish boss and they're treated badly and they're paid nothing and it's in bad conditions. And they think, now personally, I think our audience would agree, working is good for you and better for you. But there's a lot of people go, but I can go on the sick and I can have not just the same money or almost the same money without the hassle, but more money. It's a rational decision to make. But this is the Centre for Social Justice, who are a brilliant think tank. Universal credit claimant who's not working and takes the average housing benefit plus personal independence payment for ill health, which again is now huge numbers of people, will receive £25,000 as of next year. But a full-time worker on the national living wage of £12.21 an hour will earn around £22,500 after paying income tax, national insurance. But what's actually in your pocket, in your bank account, £2.5 grand is a huge sum of money.
So those on minimum wage, who are losing a little bit of tax and their national insurance, are paying for those that are getting more than them by doing nothing.
And crucially, it will be their neighbours. And this is one of the things why I think, your Labour, Islington-y, your poshies don't really care about this issue. They don't think it's a problem. They don't know people who do this, because they're the same people who don't think that people have kids to get extra benefits.
Exactly.
Because kids to them are an expense. You have to buy a bigger car or you have to move to a bigger home. No, you just get given a bigger home. You get more benefits. Your kids aren't an expense to you because you don't spend anything on them or make any effort for them. And this is the thing, they don't understand because they don't live next door to these people. But I tell you who does understand. And the support, remember when the two-child benefit cap came in, but also that 26 grand benefit. That's it.
Yep.
That's the max any family. I don't care how many kids you've got. That's the max you're going to get ever. The most support for that was from people who earned under 20 grand a year.
Yeah.
Why? Because they live in the same street as those people, and they're getting up and they're going to work, often doing the jobs that a lot of people don't want to do on minimum wage. And him next door is sitting there watching daytime telly. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi,
until he goes into the shop and then abuses the shop worker on minimum wage, who just happens to be the next door neighbour, and goes out and chucks his litter all over the street, which is the other neighbours having to sweep
and
up
his
for
kids
minimum
don't
wage.
go to school, so the teacher has to do the lesson again, and their kid gets held back. This is a real problem, and it's not just a financial problem. It's a cultural problem. It's a neighbourhood problem, societal problem. It affects education. It affects health. It affects everything. And I get. It annoys me how much this was allowed to grow up since lockdown, when Ian Duncan-Smith, I think he's an absolute hero on this, did so much to get families back to work and just say no. And everyone thought he was, on the left, oh, he's so cruel, but they haven't backtracked on a single one of his policies, which I think is very telling. Just finally, let's talk Jake Berry. He was just on the show with Mike Graham in the last hour. Sir Jake Berry, everyone's got a sodding title these days, haven't they? Thick as thieves, all these knighthood people. He was chairman of the Tory party briefly. He was a Boris Johnson acolyte, a Liz Truss acolyte. He was a presenter on this station for some time. He filled in on my show regularly on a Friday. He's defected to the Reform Party. Lots of accusations of, these are turquoise Tories. Having a load of failed Tory MPs, he lost his seat at the last election, turning up for reform. Is he just, frankly, looking for a job? Knows he hasn't got a future of the Tory party on their current polling. Is this just a career move, or is this a genuine move that actually, Tories didn't get it wrong, and Nigel Farage is the answer? How much do you trust this defection?
Well, I think we're going to see an awful lot more of it, because reform growing in the polls. The one thing reform needs are experienced MPs and people who've got experience in government and everything else. And therefore, looking at 4 years' time, when the next general election happens, MPs who know they're not going to get elected if they stay in the Tories, move to reform, and they've got a better than average chance of getting elected, and they can then provide some experience into reform.
But some reform voters might, they're getting people from left and right and experience. However, some people might say, but if the people who messed it up last time are put back in charge. Yeah,
but they'll have forgotten about that by then, because look at the mess that the current lot are making, and they'll just it'll all get blamed on them. So it's great. People say that, but they'll then go, well, they can't be any worse than this current shower, so we'll give them a chance, because that's how
which is what they said about the last lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in terms of defections. How much do you trust that? And again, I think it's very different, isn't it? If it's a sitting MP with a big majority and says, no, and they've got a history of voting against. It's like Robert Jenrick when he said, he can actually say, look, you can trust me on these issues. I literally left government. I resigned government because I didn't agree with the policy. That's why he argues that he's genuine on some of those issues. How much do you trust defections? As a general rule, doesn't usually work out very well for MPs. Lee Anderson, he did okay, but it usually doesn't work out too well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Do get in touch. Also, your thoughts on that 1 in, 1 out deal, which will probably be 1 in and 30, 1 out and 30 in, frankly. And also, of course, work not paying. If you go on sickness benefits. Your thoughts, very welcome. As I say, 0344 499 1000. We'll get to those calls next. This is... Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in. As to all the
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:25 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Oh, coming in thick and fast. I wonder why you're interested in this topic. One in, one out. That's the deal. We're told around 3:30 is going to be announced at the press conference with Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer at number 10 today in terms of those channel migrants. Is that the solution? Well, let's talk about it with Herbie, who's on the line in Harrow. Good morning to you, Herbie. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julie. Well, what Macron should be doing, he shouldn't be kissing and hugging and saying, welcome, Mr. Macron. What he should be saying, listen, matey, this is your problem. They're in your country illegally. Don't pass it on to us. We've had enough. We don't need it. You sort your problem out, because what we're going to do, if they come over here, we're going to send them back to you. You can have them. It's not our problem. It's yours. You deal with it.
Well, you say that.
Making them offers.
A, that would be good, tough talk I'd love to hear. But B, Keir Starmer, he wants to be in the EU club, so he's not going to do it. They're having a little Remainer bromance right now. But C, can't do that. They won't accept the plane. They won't accept the boat. We can't go into their territorial waters. I honestly, when people talk about this, and Reform do that a lot, it sounds great. You literally can't do it.
But the problem is, Julia, is that then he should be saying to Macron, we're not paying you any more money.
Yeah.
Don't become that friendly, because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Don't take us for fools. We've had enough. You've got to deal with it. It's your problem. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have boats on the line of you, and we're going to push them back. It's up to you to deal with it, because then let their Navy rescue them people themselves. Why should we be doing it all?
I agree with you. They literally have the French Navy, or lifeboats. They literally escort these rickety dinghies, and as soon as they're in the middle, talk about it. He's not really that bothered. He doesn't believe in borders. This particular Labour crew, this human rights lawyer, they genuinely think that, I'm a citizen of nowhere, and everyone has a right to live wherever they want in the world, and then no one's illegal. They actually believe this stuff.
But the problem is, Julie, the crisis is about to hit us. It's becoming out of hand. People are getting that frustrated now and that bitter about it, that there's going to be civil unrest. Believe you me,
I agree with you.
Before the end of this year, there's going to be civil unrest, because people have had enough.
Yeah, I really do think that it is now, because people are talking about it more. And I mean, at least the BBC have even vaguely accepted there might be an issue that is worth dealing with. That's a new thing this year. But it is extraordinary at the growth in anger I've seen from people who have otherwise been really, unbothered by this and unaffected personally, and are now saying, yeah, I'm done with this now. Herbie, thank you so much for your call. I feel the passion. Tracy is on the line in Burton-upon-Trent. A very good morning to you, Tracy.
Good morning, Julia. Julia, I think it's a good idea.
OK, whoa, I didn't actually expect to get one of those calls.
Right, now, Edison, said you can fail 999 times as long as you get it on the 1000th time.
Right, yep.
Okay. The Labour government are not going to do what the people of this country want to do.
Yep.
So I think, sucking it up, we're going to have to watch them go through all their machinations like this, one in, one out, until they actually learn, because they're like 2-year-olds, until they've gone through every possible iteration of what they could possibly do before they actually get round to doing what the rest of us worked out 10 years ago.
Yeah. You're right, they're going to have to try and be seen to fail, and then. But bear in mind that Keir Starmer always said the reason why the Tories hadn't dealt with the boat issue was because they weren't dealing with EU and France. It was all Brexiteers and everything. And if only you could have someone who could sit around the table. Well, you've had a whole year of sitting around the table. He's had 3 days. I mean, with the best cutlery from Windsor Castle, the red carpet rolled out. How's that working?
Yeah, he needs, because he cannot see it. They cannot see it. He needs to go through the process and fail. Unfortunately, the British public are the ones that suffer while he's on this very slow, slow learning curve.
Here's the thing. You think he'll ever learn?
No, I don't. I don't. But, you know, I'm trying to be positive and upbeat. Julia.
You are such a good person. That's all I can say. You're a better person than me. I've had the misfortune of meeting these people, so I'm less forgiving. I am very much less forgiving. I'm very unforgiving of people who can see a problem and then shout bigot and racist and far right at anyone who points out that the emperor isn't wearing new clothes. I hold receipts. I hold receipts. But you're a nicer soul. What can I say, Tracy? Thank you for your call. Appreciate that. Philip, we found someone who thinks it's a good idea, but for different reasons than Keir Starmer would claim. But, I mean, this is laughable, though.
It is completely laughable. What a lovely person. What a fantastic way to look at it. But she's 100% right. You know, the British people are going to have to pay for, you know, Keir Starmer going through every machination of everything that he thinks is a good idea to try and keep his backbenchers on side and suddenly realise that actually Rwanda, if instead of fighting against it, if he'd helped enable it, it might have been.
Rwanda was never going to be expanded to a level where it would be.
Well,
worth
we don't know. It was never given the chance. That's the trouble.
They could have pushed it through quicker if they'd wanted to. There was no real will from the Conservatives to deal with that issue. There hasn't been. They're still pussyfooting around today about the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention. I mean, that's a no-brainer at this point. If you haven't worked that one out yet, it's a tiny part of the solution. But it's required as part of the solution.
Other nations just ignore it.
Well, yes.
And the European Court.
To be fair, that's the thing. That's why they're not that bothered about the EU. You know, Italians and French and Spanish, they just simply don't even bother obeying any of the edicts.
And therefore, we should do exactly the same. But you know, the Germans make the rules, the French ignore the rules, and the British apply all the rules. That's been a mantra for years and years and years.
There we go. 10:32 is the time. Coming up, we are going to be talking about that. Both that and also that Tory defection of the former Tory Party chairman, Sir Jake Berry, to reform. How damaging is that going to be? We'll talk about that with the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. He's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, this is Talk. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me as well. We're now joined by Henry Hill, who's Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, to talk all things politics. A very good morning to you, Henry.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, you'll be quite surprised to learn that our last caller thought that the one-in, one-out deal that we understand Starmer's going to do with Macron later today, after this third day of this international summit and a full day of talks in Downing Street, she thinks it's a good idea, but only because she thinks it will prove that nothing they're trying is actually going to work and they're going to have to try harder and do it properly. Is that the only way we could actually grade this as a good idea?
I mean, it's one of those things where, in theory, you can sort of see how it could eventually have made sense, right? Obviously, originally, if it's one in, one out, the numbers are staying the same. But the idea is that if people know that coming on a boat makes means that they definitely won't get here and they will definitely be returned. It just massively reduces the incentive to cross. This was the same logic as Rwanda, right? Which was that the whole point was that you could get automatically sent to Rwanda, whatever happened to the status of your claim, and therefore you wouldn't cross. The problem in both cases was trying to get the basically the odds bad enough for people who are obviously risk takers because they're prepared to risk their lives in a small boat in one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, not to risk it. And for Sunak, that was partly his own fault, but it was partly he didn't have enough agreements with Rwanda in terms of the number of people they'd take.
It was a couple of hundred. I think it would have been 300 at the highest. I mean, didn't we? I mean, we have sent some people there, but I think we sent more Home Secretaries there than we sent people who actually deported. The only people who did go, we paid to go there.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, if he'd said, right, it's only going to be from today, right? If you come over here from today, then you risk being included in Rwanda. That's a much more likely deterrent if you're on the other side of the channel, right? Because it means that you're going to be one of a pool of a few hundred or a few thousand, 300 of whom are going to Rwanda. That's actually quite bad odds, right? But
I think that's very good odds. If you've risked your life travelling from Eritrea and you're willing to risk your life on a rickety dinghy of 50 people, often without a life jacket, those are good odds, I'm afraid.
Well, no, we did see some impact on crossings when the government had brought it in, right? And when the government was saying there's going to be a deadline. So I'm not saying it would have fixed the problem. No. With Starmer, of course, the challenge is currently I think it's like 1 in, 1 out is one thing, but I think currently I read in the papers it's sort of 17 in, 1 out.
No, a 1 in 17 chance. Well, no, 1 in 17 of those who would arrive. But the key thing about this is the people we'd be getting, which are obviously, they're a much better bet. These are people who've proven asylum seekers. But of course, will they then, because they're able to join their uncle in Leicester, they're then going to bring their entire extended family. We ended up with more people, and the idea is that we won't have to pay for these people because these people will be legitimate and therefore they'll be able to work. Except, of course, they're not all. I know this is a surprise to everyone. Doctors, engineers and entrepreneurs, and they're going to be working as taxi drivers and Uber riders, and we're going to be paying for their housing and their top-up benefits and their kids for the rest of their lives.
I mean, absolutely. Family is one of the single biggest things that neither government or neither party in government has grappled with. It's probably one of the biggest reasons that, as you say, we at the very least need to start doing way more prisoner vote style carve-outs from the European Convention on Human Rights, because family reunification is a snowball. Right? Yeah. Think about that Gaza refugee scheme some MPs are trying to set up. You know, the advocates for it say, there's only a few thousand Palestinians in the UK and only some of them have families. They make it sound like it's a small number. But of course, the moment those family members come over here, they have a lot of family members still in Gaza. Yeah. And they have an equal human right to family reunification. So there's actually no limit.
Not much birth control used in Gaza, which it's so weird that there's anyone to come, given the success of that genocide, which apparently Israel is committing on the people of Palestinian people in Gaza, who bizarrely keep seeing their population go up. One thing Israel's bad at, it's genocide. Let's talk about another big story in the news, and Kemi Badenoch's going to be doing a speech along these lines in a couple of hours' time as well, which is this, she's talking about banning foreigners from claiming sickness benefits. Let's face it, we've got enough Brits who are swinging the lead when it comes to that. Extraordinary report from the Centre for Social Justice showing that, work doesn't pay under this system. And they say under Starmer's Labour, but basically this was a system under the Tories as well. He's just failing to reform it. We've seen this massive increase in the number of people, particularly mental health claims, which are much harder to prove or disprove for sickness benefits, but showing that basically if you're on a full-time worker on national living wage of £12.21 an hour, come 2026, 2027, you'll earn around £22,500 after tax and national insurance, so what's actually in your bank account, in your pocket at the end of the year. But if you're on universal credit, you're not working, you take the average housing benefit, you also get personal independence payments for ill health, you can receive £25,000, £2.5 grand more. No wonder people are going onto these sickness lists like, never before.
It is crazy. Actually, ironically, the Conservatives at one point, headed by work from the Centre for Social Justice, did try and do things about this, right? Like universal credit, the clue's in the name. The idea was to have a single welfare payment. Now, there were several advantages to this, but one of them was that you could make sure that in the centre, you had more control over the maximum amount that someone could get. Because as you've just described there, how is it that these benefits add up to more than somebody on the national living wage? It's because there's 3 different ones, right? And the government, no central authority in government is cross-checking whether you've got one or two or three of them, and whether or not that adds up to more than a working person is taking home.
Yeah.
And because there's all these independently assessed benefits, they can't do that. Now, I think most people would agree it's actually perfectly fair that you shouldn't be able to take more in welfare than you can earn in work.
Unless you are severely disabled and you have extra heating costs or travel costs, and there, but for the luck of God, you or I are not in that situation. I want those people definitely to have whatever they need to have a comfortable and meaningful life. Through no fault of their own, they've got a disability. But the point is, it's offering those choices to people, because the reality is a lot of the people, the Labour MPs and others who are making those decisions in Parliament, and the civil servants, they can't even, the Guardian journalists, they can't conceive that anyone would choose not to work and claim sickness benefit. But of course, they're not doing the sort of jobs that these people would probably only be able to get, where it's actually rather harder work than sitting behind a desk all day.
True, but I think the critical thing is absolutely, if somebody has a serious disability, but I think the crucial thing is that it's cash, right? I am absolutely in favour of the state providing support for people who really need it, things like incentive grants and making adjustments to their homes and other kinds of things. But it's just about whenever you're handing something out in the form of an unrestricted cash payment, right? Something that is just functionally income. That, I think, is where it gets trickier to justify giving that in that form in a way that, at a level that is higher than wages.
Well, those people have talked about vouchers and it can only be exchanged for healthy food or this and that. The trouble is you then start a black market in these things.
Well, I guess I would never do it on food, right? I think that somebody living on disability has as much right to choose what they eat as anyone else. I think that's I tend to think that's an incredibly patronising way of treating people who are receiving state assistance. But what I mean is, in terms of like some of these things that drive the really high costs, like the sort of adjustments that people with severe mobility impairments need, for example, I think that those can reasonably be controlled in a way that means that you're not just handing out a cash benefit, because of course, one, it's unfair, right? I think in some senses, because it's always, whenever we have this discussion, not you and I, but society, the case is always the hard cases, right? People with really severe disabilities and so on. But then what always happens with these systems is it's actually incredibly hard and has proven functionally impossible to write government policy and welfare policy so that it actually restricts these additional payments to those people.
Bet you I could. I bet you I could. No, I'm sorry. Well, I do think that where there's a will, there's a way. And you probably have to be quite cruel to be kind. But I'm not a bleeding hearter, I'm afraid. So I probably would. And yet there'll be some people who miss out. I think it needs to be a completely different way of assessing people. It certainly should be in person. Pretty sure it should involve medical professionals, not some random person recruited by Serco, whoever. But I do not think this is beyond the wit of man. I really, really don't. Before I let you go, I want to talk to you about a lot of the big news today in Westminster Circle. Also, as it was last night, the Sun's Harry Cole broke this story, which is that the former Tory party chairman, Sir Jake Berry, has defected to Reform UK. Now, there's some provisos here. One is he's a former chairman. He was only chairman for a couple of months, as it was. He was, and we're not talking successful Parkers, these people who are, very, very big, beasts in the Conservative Party. He's also an ex-MP. He lost his seat at the last election. Is there something that actually shows this is like, we've had another former cabinet minister, two former cabinet ministers in the last week, David Jones as well, former Welsh Secretary, defecting to Reform. Is this showing that there is a momentum to Reform and senior, serious people are taking Reform's chances of winning the next election seriously? Or is this just a couple of blokes and their mates thinking, oh, I might get a job this way?
I wrote about this morning, and I was trying to find, and I couldn't because the internet is terrible now. I wrote a piece a few years ago saying, what is the measure of a senior Conservative at the point when they've churned through so many people, especially, as you say, the party chairmanship. The party chairmanship used to be a really independent, substantial position, which people held 4 years. They were an independent power broker in the party. Yeah. These days, it's just somebody appointed by the leader. We've had an awful lot of them. So having Sir Jake Berry described as a former Conservative Party chairman, you do have to say, like, that is a strongly depreciated currency compared to where it used to be. And that's true of everyone who's held it since, not just him. Yeah. But I do think that the challenge for Farage is that, on the one hand, obviously the Conservative Party does not want to have people defecting away from it, right? But Farage is supposed to be the future. He's supposed to, the whole vibe of reform is that he's an outsider and he's going to come in with this new party and sweep away the detritus of 20 or 30 years of failure. And yet, it's hard to staff a revolution with retreads, right? And all of the people he's attracting, most of them admittedly at the moment conservative defectors, they've all been involved in the last government, right? Yeah. They weren't particularly speaking up at the time about all of these, but Jake Berry writing about how one of the best ways to destroy Britain would be to like what Labour and the Tories did for the past however many years. And it's like, well, mate, I mean, you didn't say that at the time, and you thought Tom Tugendhat was the solution 18 months ago. So it's challenging for Farage that people like Rupert Lowe, who are the independent voices who he had brought into politics. Rupert Lowe is a reform politician. Yeah. He keeps alienating, and then he makes up the numbers with sort of former Tories. Yeah. I don't know if that's what reform voters want.
That's, very interesting analysis. Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Henry Hill, Deputy Editor at the Conservative Home. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that?
Well, it's going to be interesting as soon as we start to see, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the election results that start to come out. So I think with the next elections are the Welsh elections and further local elections, and then when we start to get by-elections in different constituencies, if Reform put up some former Tory MPs as candidates, we'll see what happens then.
Indeed. Just some breaking news for you before we go to a break. It's interesting, the threat of physical attacks by Iran on people living in the UK has increased significantly since 2022. That's what the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament has warned. They've been taking evidence from MI5 and others. They say Iran has targeted prominent Jewish individuals in Britain. They have been among at least 15 attempts to kill or kidnap people on British soil. The report warned of this sharp increase, and they say Iranian intelligence service often use third-party agents to attempt assassination within the UK. Now, by the way, we've been seeing these attempts, and successful attempts by the Russians. They are a hostile nation. Iran too. When people say, like Israel and UK and America bombing Iran, not a problem. No, those are what we used to call acts of war. Acts of war, that's what they are. They are a hostile nation. We'll talk about that a little bit more with Philip, and we will talk about that also with our next guest, Mike Neville. He's here to talk about the extraordinary evidence we heard from the parents of some of the children who were injured and thankfully survived, but with the most awful life-changing injuries in the Southport attack. That's up next. This is Talk. Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no...
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Mike Neville joins us now. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Philip Ingram in the studio with us as well. Mike, I wish it was under happier circumstances we were talking to you, but it's extraordinary evidence we heard from the Southport inquiry yesterday. This is an inquiry into basically how could Axel Rudikabana have been stopped from that awful attack in July last year. And some of the evidence we heard from the families, the parents of the children, was, I mean, I have to say, it was just, as a mum, was sort of, whew, I'm just going to have to take a deep breath here. But let me just go through some of it. Child C1, she's only known as Child C1, 7-year-old girl, because so much focus, understandably, on the three little girls, Alice da Silva Aguirre, Baby King and Elsie Dot Scancombe, the three children who actually died. But there were 8 other children who were brutally stabbed, some dozens and dozens of times, and you know, a dozen of other children who had to flee, and thank God, only by chance survived, and of course 2 adults as well. But Child C1, as she's only known, the mother said that there were no adults there to help our daughter. The organiser basically ran out to try and get help, and did the right thing, everyone agrees. But she said she was only supported by other children, and she said that I mean, just extraordinary that in the chaos, there was a stampede, they were getting stabbed, the girls tried to flee the first floor dance studio. In the chaos, she said she was knocked over and found herself trapped and huddled with 2 other children at the top of the stairs. She put her arms around the girls as the man began to attack them. She tells me with such clarity that a moment came where one of the girls was able to get up. She put the girl's hand on the handrail and told her to go, to get down the stairs, and she did. As the attack continued, her daughter crouched over another girl, telling her it would be okay. And the daughter said to her mum, "It happened so fast, but I helped them. I'm glad I could help them." And she said that her daughter was stabbed, you know, a dozen times, was able to make it down the stairs, escape down the stairs, and then the most absolute harrowing, the mother then was able to see CCTV footage of this little girl making it out of the door on the ground floor and then being dragged back in. I mean,
this is the awfulness of this, and what concerns me about this inquiries is what's going to be brought up. Yes, we need to know about Prevent, because again, I've done Freedom of Information Act requests on Prevent, and they're totally trying to do this balancing act where, we must consider the far right against Islamic terrorism and this.
Let's deal with the people who are actually killing people.
But the trouble is the people who make the decisions, they cannot get this into their head. They don't want to believe how bad one thing the Islamic terrorism problem is, and you see it time and they were told by Lord Shawcross to focus on that.
But wait a second, we're told this wasn't a terror attack, even though he had an Al-Qaeda manual and some rice in his bedroom.
This is the problem, you see. So it's all blurred. And again, I've tried to find out from the Prime Minister's office, when did the Prime Minister know that the ricin and the Al-Qaeda handbook had been found? They're refusing to tell me. Apparently this will impact on future briefings, which I simply don't believe. Because what you have is the authorities putting forward one aspect of this. It was a Cardiff choir boy who'd done this wickedness, and then the photograph was released. And again, with Kevin O'Sullivan from Talk, we've been trying to find out who decided to release this angelic photograph.
Well, yeah, I'm told again it was just the only photograph the media could get hold of at the time. And again, that mugshot wasn't released, and the argument was he was under 18. But again, the public were played, and the public knew they were being played. And we knew straight off, and people were being played on social media by far-right people who were trying to stir things up, but also just people making not unreasonable assumptions on the day about who this might be. Axel Rudikabana is behind bars now, minimum of 52 years under life sentence. It's not enough. I don't know why anyone even thinks this man should not be put away for life, come out in a coffin. We're a mad enough country, we will let him out. That's what I find crazy. These girls, there are parents who are still mourning their children aged, 9, 6 and 7. I mean, I can't even imagine what they're going through. We've got parents who are dealing with children who have life-changing injuries, who are battling every day through its injuries. Even the girls who did escape without any physical injuries, the scars, the terror that they feel. These are girls who are now scared of leaving the house.
Physical injuries will heal, won't they? The physical injuries.
Some of them won't.
Yeah, but a lot of them will. But the psychological damage that's been done to these just little girls who are there to do that Taylor Swift workshop, who just wanted to have a lovely time.
But this is the thing. This inquiry is supposed to say, well, could he have been stopped? Now we hear this, whether it's a terror attack, does it matter? Was it a terror attack? Was it a far-right Islamist or a lunatic? I don't care. Seems to me there are an awful lot of these people, and we're just catching them usually after they've killed. There was a plot only the other day, someone trying to basically copy what Axel Rudikabana had done. Now, we clearly have a system that doesn't work very well, because this kid had been flagged up as a danger. He wanted to go and kill people in his school. He had knives. He was talking about white genocide. He'd gone in and attacked kids in his own school. Clearly there was a problem. Social workers were too scared to go to his home without police. Oh, but it's okay. Let him on a bus with a knife. Again and again. He was caught with a knife, what, 6 times? Nothing is done. We are clearly failing to keep the country safe.
We actually are failing to keep the country safe, and every day people enter this country we know nothing of. Who are the people coming in? When's the next Axel Ruder-Cabana coming? When's the next Manchester Arena bombing?
Yep.
We're just simply making a really awful world. And the other terrible thing is it's often women and girls who are threatened, either sex attacks or by these vicious killings. So we saw in Manchester, it's really teenage girls who were the...
It was girls having fun, enjoying music.
Yeah,
not allowed.
And it's our government, their first duty is to keep us safe, and they're failing, because will anybody assure us from the government there won't be another one of those? There'll be another one. There'll be another and another and another.
And again, and how many? And people have had enough, and then we're all told we're far right because we say we've had enough. It's interesting. This report just came out just a few moments ago from the Intelligence Security Committee in Parliament, and it's MPs and peers who chair this, but they've been briefed by MI5, and they're pointing out that Iran has targeted prominent Jewish individuals. They are among at least 15 attempts to kill or kidnap people on British soil since 2022. I mean, this is quite extraordinary in terms of the threat posed by Iran. We've got a case that's going through the courts right now involving suspects who believe, by the way, two of them to have arrived on the Channel migrant boats. It's amazing. There's a link. What do you make of that report?
It's truly shocking. I mean, what I will say is our counter-terrorism, our security services are some of the best in the world, and what do they do? They do prevent a lot of these things happening. But the trouble is that they only, like the IRA said, they only need to be successful once. You know, it's truly bad.
I mean, and they are successful on a regular basis. That is the worry. Philip Ingram, do you want to come in on this? I mean, as a former senior military intelligence officer.
Yeah, well, since 2018, I think 39 late-stage attacks have been stopped by our intelligence security services. And the measurement of success is nothing happens, and that's when people then get complacent as to what's going on. You know, the Iranians have been stirring this up. That's part of the reason why Palestine Action have been banned, because they've been exploiting the naive individuals within there. They've been trying to undermine society. The Russians are doing the same. We have to wake up to reality. And a lot of threat is coming across undocumented in the boats.
Yeah, I mean, again, we know MI5 have highlighted that before as well, haven't they? That, you know, that of course that's a risk. Why wouldn't you use that route? And by the way, when we got rid of ISIS in Iraq, well, sort of pretended to get rid of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, but their edict went out: make your way into Europe and cause havoc over there. Oh well, you know, welcome. Let me put you in a hostel next to a family home. I mean, and that is what happens. So appreciate you coming in, Mike Neville, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. More from Philip Ingram coming up. Love to hear your thoughts on that and all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining me here at Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's always great to have your company. And also, of course, the company of Philip Ingram, who's a former senior military intelligence officer, who's also joining us for the whole show, back in your hot seat. Don't forget, if you've missed any of the show already, or you're going to have to go out, I don't know, you've got a life, a job, I don't know. You have to, I don't know, claim your sickness benefits and earn more than someone on the minimum wage. We'll talk about that in a moment. Maybe you've got to go and smuggle some Channel migrants. I don't know. But you can always go to my YouTube page. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what it's called, so you've got no excuse for not finding it. If you hit subscribe, you will never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about that Channel migrant one in, one out deal. We're also going to be talking about Kemi Danenot, the Tory leader. She's got a speech in about an hour and a half today talking about how we risk becoming a welfare state with an economy attached. We're already a national health service with an economy attached because of our rapidly expanding benefits bill. This, as the Centre for Social Justice think tank have pointed out, in a year's time, living on sickness benefits will pay more than a minimum wage job. It'll pay £25,000 a year, which is more than the £22,500 you get after tax and NI if you're working a minimum wage job. Well, we're wondering why those numbers on sickness benefits are flying high. What a surprise. Plus, we'll be talking about the doctor strike. Resident doctors have agreed a 5-day walkout starting on July the 25th. But we could see some 200,000 hospital appointments cancelled at that time. They are demanding a small, ever so tiny 29% pay rise. Yeah, really. Plus, new documents have revealed that the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, him of the let's give the Chagos Islands to Mauritius fame, he's handed himself an effective veto over all government policy. Analysis of the documents revealed that Lord Hermer has made it a number of changes in terms of the advice the Attorney General gives all of the government lawyers, basically inserting a new snitch clause telling civil servants to inform him if ministers may be about to break the law. And the assumption is that any new policy could possibly face a legal challenge. I mean, yeah, we've ruled by lawyers in every sense now. Anyway, all that coming up, plenty more besides. I want to hear from you on any of the topics you want to talk about, but I have a funny feeling you, like me, will believe that the biggest topic is this summit we've got today in number 10. The French president arrived about an hour and a half ago. Lots of chummy backslapping, clutching of hands and French bromances going on between Starmer and Emmanuel Macron before Macron winds our busiest shipping channel in the world in a flimsy dinghy, often without a life jacket. You think they're worried about the odds of Keir Starmer deporting them? Oh, by the way, the only reason they stay in the system that we might not be allowed to check whether people are kosher relatives of, you know, the uncle in Leicester.
And of course the processing that, you know, with all these people with no documentation whatsoever, and it's going to be so easy to prove. And if you're going to put that level of processing in Calais, why not do it permanently and just keep everyone in Calais and say you have to go through there, and if you get the red ticket to come into the country, then you're legitimate.
Well, the reality is, when we're told, you know, if there were legal channels, one of the arguments from the hand-wringing Liberals is, but if you had legal routes, people would come the legal routes. But of course, these young men, as they largely are, not, as the Treasury Minister Darren Jones said the other week, mostly women and children. I mean, that's a flat-out lie.
That's a lie.
He seriously needs to get to Specsavers very, very soon. But you know, these young men, they wouldn't be the top call. A lot of them, again, they lie about whether 90% of them don't even show any ID. They just claim to be, you know, it's like with that in 2015 when everyone was allowed to come from Syria to Germany and they just crossed the border. Everyone said they were Syrian. It turns out only about 40% of those who arrived were from Syria.
So we've got military-age men who've come from allegedly a combat zone with experience in combat zones and all the rest of it, all coming into the country with no documentation whatsoever. We don't know what their criminal records are or how
we know they've got a higher rate of criminality because the stats are very clear on that.
It's proved on that, and according to the government, this is no risk. And we should pay for them and put them up in 4-star hotels.
I think this
or other
absolutely sounds like a very good way of running the country. I don't think that anything could possibly go wrong. I mean, genuinely.
Well, we do need more brain surgeons.
Here's the thing: we do need. When you spell it out like that, fortunately, they're all rocket scientists, so they haven't got as many brain surgeons among. But otherwise,
that's next week.
That's next week. I mean, genuinely, you spell it out like that. How is it there are so many people on the left who still don't think this is really a problem? They're willing to attempt to tackle it and to pay lip service to it. And Keir Starmer and most of his cabinet are the same on this. They don't really believe this is a problem. They actually think that you and me and my audience and everyone who agrees, they actually think that we are. They do think that we're all far-right racist bigots.
We could solve that tomorrow. We just do a survey of the country and we identify where all of these individuals are that say this is a good idea, and then we put the refugee camps right beside them.
I've said we
in their
buy
back
up
garden.
the whole of Keir Starmer's street, apart from his house.
Yeah. And put them all in there.
And we put hostels of, you know, full of 40 young boat arrivals. Enjoy.
Well, better
Enjoy,
Jeremy Corbyn, compulsory purchase order of second and third floor of his house, and we put them in there.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. They don't live with the reality of it. And there's people who live with the reality of it. And we've seen this in towns. And again, it's not just in the cities, it's towns and villages. See what happened in Ireland, you know, where some little villages, you know, the local hotel gets taken up and you double the size of the village with a bunch of young men.
But you've also taken the community centre away in many places. So it's changing the whole feel of the country.
Utterly mad. And it's utterly mad. It's been allowed to happen. It's allowed to grow. I mean, and they've said, oh, you know, it's not really a problem. Again, if you don't get that this is a problem, again, this is a sanity test. This is up there with, do you think women have penises?
Yeah.
There are some sanity tests on these things, and if you don't get it, do you think that people who commit repeated crimes or they should go to prison for a long time? These are just tests of whether you are frankly paying attention or not, and most of our political class are not.
Yep.
It's not their problem. They're not impacted by it. They live in areas where it doesn't matter. They send their kids to schools where it doesn't matter. Not a problem for them, and it is a problem for other people, and we're fed up of being told that we're wrong for saying the quiet bit out loud. And we were talking to quite a few callers earlier and lots of messages. People are at breaking point. They're done. They're done. You've got to deal with this. This one-in, one-out scheme, it's not going to work. It's not going to deter. It's not going to be scalable. There's no deal that Keir Starmer can do on anything. I mean, my God, I would love to sell that man a used car. Oh, £1 million, Keir, £1 million. It's a bargain. The man can't negotiate for toffee. Say what you want about Macron, and he gambled. He gambled last year with his parliamentary elections. He is a lame duck president who is despised by his own people. He's only been elected twice because he was up against Marine Le Pen, and he had like 20% support. He's got even less support than Keir Starmer had at the general election, for goodness sake.
He's running rings around him.
And but he's a wily operator. Yeah. He came from nowhere to become the president of France. He's a wily operator. I dread to think what's happening behind that shiny black door in Downing Street right now, because Macron can go back to France, I've had a lovely state visit, absolutely lovely. We're going to announce something on defence and blah, blah, and I leave. He doesn't need this deal. It's totally irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant to his politics. He's not standing for election again, whereas Starmer is desperate for it. And when you're desperate for a deal, then you don't get a good deal.
Do you want to know the worst thing? Starmer won't realise he's been had and played by Macron.
Oh, it's so.
And none of his cabinet ministers will as well. They'll all be going, "Hey, this is brilliant. Over 50. We're 50 less." No, Diane, there's not 50 less. There's still the same number.
Even Diane's not in the case. He's not that dumb. He's not that dumb. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are we being too negative? Because I can understand the theory, and Henry Hill from Conservative Home is pointing out, same logic as Rwanda, but again, the key thing about this is the key thing is it's the scale. By the way, just breaking news, last few moments, Ursula von der Leyen, one of my and your favourite people, the European Commission President, failed defence minister in Germany, absolute complete loser. She scraped by, I think it was one vote in the European Parliament when she was actually approved to be the European Commission President. And by the way, there were no other candidates standing against her. That's how unpopular she is. Absolute waste of space. She, along with Macron, have been trying to punish us for our democratic vote for the last 9 years. She has just survived a no-confidence vote in the European Parliament. So, deep sighs. To be fair, though, whoever they put in would be just as bad. So there we are. Anyway, let's mention also the Royal Navy. They're set to house sailors on a barge. It's like a psychedelic zebra painted black and white barge. Sans. Come on, let's have a little bit of Emmanuel Macron pronounce it. Sans vitesse. If it's pronounced in French, it must be classy. But they're going to house sailors on this barge, which is remarkably similar to the Bibi Stockholm. What I can't wait to find out is exactly how many human rights lawyers are going to be lining up to say how outrageous it is for British sailors to be housed on a barge, when, of course, it was outrageous for Channel migrants to be housed on a barge. But no, it's good enough for our sailors.
Oh, it's good enough for our service personnel. But I've stayed at worse. And actually, for the sailors that are going to be on it, the cabins that they're going to get are probably bigger than the accommodation they would have had in HMS Queen Elizabeth that's in Rosyth being refitted.
Well, my daughter, post A-levels, is currently youth hosteling around Europe, and I've looked at some of the hostels, and I'm thinking she'd probably prefer to be in the Bibi Stockholm, judging by them.
Bibi Stockholm was very comfortable.
I mean, one of them's got like 18 people to a room. I'm not sure I'd cope with that with the bunk beds, but there we are.
The smell.
Oh, I love that you went straight to the smell. That was unusual for a guy. Unusual. Anyway, good luck. Anyway, let's also talk about, KB Badenoch's making a speech about how we're about to become basically a welfare state with a nation attached. We're already an NHS with a nation attached. We haven't got any money. We're spending more money. The ballooning welfare state, not just for working age, but also for pensioners. The Office Budget Responsibility pointed that out. This huge percentage of going out. We've got a lot more people who are living older, which is a great thing. They were like, well, we've all paid in. Well, you have, but unfortunately that money's been spent a long time ago. And the younger generation, pensions, I mean, there's people in their 20s now, they are not going to get anything like the pensions people are going to get. I mean, certainly these NHS public sector pensions where they're putting in, you know, big percentage of your income into these, there's not going to be any money for those. We are going to face a crisis at some point. We're all going to be in that situation. But in terms of working age, extraordinary report from the Centre for Social Justice pointing out that work doesn't pay. They're pointing out under Starmer's Labour is a male front page, but actually this came out under the Tories. Starmer just isn't reforming the welfare state, and the Tories let it burgeon up. Well, it went down under them in terms of people, you know, claiming benefits and more people working, and then it ballooned from 2020. But they did have 4 years to do that, and they failed to do so. But basically, sickness benefits. If you're on your PIP, your personal independence payment, you're not working, you're getting, you know, housing benefit and the like. It's worth £25,000 a year, but that is £2,500 more a year than your take-home pay from a minimum wage job. No wonder people are going on the sick.
Yeah. And of course, you know, if you're on benefits for the whole of your life, you then get your full pension. Whereas if you haven't paid into your pension properly because you've had a checkered work life, you may not get a full pension.
Really? So the mums who take some time off and don't pay their NI stamp because they were off looking after their kids.
I think maternity leave counts for pensions. You get your pension stamp for that. But
some mums take, you know, a couple of years off.
Exactly.
And
therefore
but if you're on your benefits, you get your minimum state pension.
And not only that, but you then will get preferential treatment and free into elderly care homes, so you get looked after. My father went into initially into a local council care home. He was in there. We had to pay for him to be in there.
Yeah.
Those that were in benefits the whole of life were in there for free. Not only were they for free, but they got pocket money every week.
Oh, no, I tell you what's also worse. I was having a family member when she was in a care home, again, a completely normal care home. It wasn't anyway. It's not like the Ritz, you know. And basically, they charge extra fees to those who are paying to cover the fact that the council doesn't pay the full cost of the people who are there getting it for free. I mean, the whole system does not work. But at every different age level, what's the solution, though?
Well, we need to reduce the number of people who can claim benefits. I think if someone is claiming something, unless they are so disabled, and you know, of course, you know, we've got people in Parliament without limbs, or in the House of Lords without limbs, unless they're so disabled that they can't get out and do stuff, they should be forced to go out and do local community work, cleaning the streets, weeding the streets, cleaning the graffiti out of communities. That would then mean that they're not going to let their kids go out and graffiti bits and pieces and chuck litter everywhere, because they're going to start, and it'll improve the standards.
Most of the growth has been in, certainly on the sickness benefits in terms of mental health claimants, but again, we're not talking about people with severe schizophrenia who can't get a job and no one would employ them. We're talking about people with anxiety, with depression. I've been watching various different shows, you know, involving young people, and the non-stop any reality TV. I like a bit of trash every now and then. Non-stop people talk about, I suffer from anxiety. Like, everybody suffers from anxiety.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, it's a load of nonsense, most of this. It really is. You know, you just don't want to go to work that day. Just be honest about it. Or you're stressed. Yeah. Well, we've all done that. You try being a freelance journalist for years. That's fairly stressful,
exactly.
you know.
So get over it. Move on.
Yeah, well, but exactly. But the thing is, I mean, again, what about, you know, people working in the, you know, people in the military? I think they're pretty stressed. And you know real stress from being.
Yeah,
being
no,
I
have actually had depression
and you've had
post-traumatic stress disorder. They're properly diagnosed.
And we want to help people who have these serious issues. But we're in this situation where these things are constantly sort of talked about. But you're right. If someone does have, you know, those mental health low-level problem, the low level, would it not be really good for you to be out cleaning graffiti, sweeping the streets, doing some, you know, clearing up litter? I would think that would be a remarkably satisfying thing to do, and you'd go home feeling you'd done a good job. And people need to be forced to go out and do it, because part of the issue is, you know, whenever they're saying they've got anxiety or stress, then they lose the self-motivation. So there has to be a motivation. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you
more. You don't do it, you don't get your money.
Well, and again, one of the reasons why the NHS is really struggling, everything was posed. I mean, under David Cameron, he announced there should be parity between physical health and mental health issues. Well, yes, I mean, it sounds very good, but actually, if someone's got a broken leg, there's an immediate thing that needs to be done about it, or someone's got a blood infection, you know, there's clear, easy, you know, obvious treatment. So it's not quite as easy, and we don't have enough people paid to do a lot of this stuff. And again, there's some question marks about some of the therapies people get. I met somebody who went into therapy. I think they'd five times a week. And I'm like, again, unless you've been a victim of like the Southport attack or something, where you're literally dealing with something horrific, like you sort of think you're getting into self-indulgence rather than give me the tools to get on with my life and move on with my life. But the doctors' strike, these are resident doctors. We used to call them junior doctors, but actually most of them aren't junior. They're highly qualified individuals. They're asking for it's absurd, 29% pay rise. And otherwise they are going to go on strike on the 25th of July. It's going to be 5 days. We're looking at some 200,000 different appointments being cancelled. Absolute chaos. More people put to the back of the queue. We're talking probably about people dying because there are fewer doctors and consultant doctors have to come and help, and there are people who are going to be missed through the system and who will lose their lives. That is what happens. People don't get timely treatment and then they die. And they're asking for 29%. Wes Street and the Health Secretary said, look, they will never be forgiven. I won't forgive them. The public, it would appear, not on their side anymore. They argue that they would need that to get back to where they were in real terms in wages in 2010. But that's, I think, using whether it's RPI or CPI, one of the rates of inflation. But actually, they would only need a 4.5% under the other rate of inflation, depending on whether it's retail prices or consumer price index. They argue, well, the government uses the higher one all the time when they set rain fares and energy prices and things, so why shouldn't they use it? Which is a fair argument, but no one is going to agree to a 29% pay rise a year after a 22% pay rise, are they?
But this is where the BMA have lost their way. They should be there improving professional standards and the standards that are used from a medical perspective and looking after their members. But they've become a militant union. And we sat in this studio.
It's like a student union.
We sat in this studio a year ago, whenever the government came in and West Streeting said, we're going to pay them off. We said, they're paying them off. They're going to come back for more.
Yep.
And they've come back for more. And guess what's going to happen? The train drivers are going to go, they've got more, we want more.
No, you don't think, really?
And then the nurses are going to go, we want more.
Other NHS workers did say, well, hold on a minute, why have they got that? I mean, and again,
exactly.
But then there is that argument, if there's a shortage of people, you can't recruit them, you can't retrain them and retain them, sorry. Maybe there's an argument to pay some of them more.
Yeah,
I stand by my rule. I don't think that the train driver driving the doctor to work should be earning a lot more, and it's a lot more than the doctor. I don't think train drivers go through 7 years of university and years of training, highly skilled people. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't see why we would want people who've got top grade A levels who work really, really hard, doing a really, really important job, to be not well paid. I think we should accept they should be well paid. I'm not sure this is the way to do it.
It's definitely not the way to do it. And I think what the BMA is doing is they've lost the support of the people behind this, and they're not reading the
support of the Labour government, then it's going to go horribly wrong, isn't it? Anyway, 11:23 is time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Take your calls up next. We're also going to be talking to former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell about both the doctor's strike and the sickness benefits rise as well. First up, we will take a quick break, but the number to call is 0344 499 1000 to have your say. This is Talk.
He said, oh, it was a burden. He used the word treating it with humanity, but we must control our borders. And he actually is the president who's overseeing the greatest number of illegal and legal migration to France. It's completely out of control. And as in Britain, it's fascinating to see that the surveys show that it's almost identical. About 75% of the French population, same in the UK, are at their wits' end and they want their borders back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and thank you very much indeed for joining me. Thanks very much also for your calls and your texts. We'll get to calls in just a couple of moments. I'll read some texts that are coming in about this returns deal, one in, one out deal, just 50 migrants a week to France in the trial run, we're told. How many will it actually end up being, though? But before I get to your messages, let's look at a tweet from Nigel Farage. He's been out watching the migrant boats in the Channel. I mean, bearing in mind, this was how it all started, this story, really, with him actually exposing it and literally pointing it out. And of course, everyone on the left said, oh, you know, he's just a racist, he's just a bigot, but pointing it out. And he said he'd seen the French Navy escorting 70 illegals into British waters. He's on a fishing boat at the Channel. He's posted, at the same time, Starmer is meeting with Macron to discuss migrants. The French Navy are escorting 70 illegals into British waters. This is a classic day in the English Channel over the last 5 years when the weather is calm, or a red day, as they call it. And yes, you've got a migrant boat. We've seen it through the binoculars, and they're being escorted all the way over by the French Navy. And behind us, we have a border force sitting on the 12-mile line, waiting for the handover. And that is what is going on. One in, one out, guys. That's really going to work, isn't it? Let's go to your messages. John says, if it was 50 a day, that would be a start. But when do we start sending them back? In 2029, when a general election is coming? What a coincidence. Yeah, indeed. You remember that the Rwanda policy was going to start just after when we were going to have that election. Tommy says they're having a laugh at the people. Jenny says, unbelievably embarrassing. We need to start deporting a lot more than that. Jack says it's a lousy deal. Starmer is ruining the country deliberately. Lucy says, none in, all out. Yep, that works for me, Lucy. Andrew says, so one boat in every 20 going back. One boat in every 20 going back. How much is that costing us? Because we know it's costing France nothing at all. And Martin says it's farcical while 600 or more a day come in. Don't bother if you can't do it properly. Well, let's find out if Phil... Andrew in Hertfordshire agrees. Andrew, what do you want to say?
Good morning. Good morning. It's unbelievable. This is a political announcement about nothing. If you take Philip's knowledge of the military, and the number this year is 40,000, if you look at the number that have come across over the last 5 years, how many battalions of men of fighting age have we let into the country?
I think Philip knows the answer to that.
Yeah, two in the last week alone. And since we started taking records in 2008, more than the whole of the regular personnel in the British military. That's the Navy, Air Force and Army combined.
What could possibly go wrong, Andrew?
Well, there comes a point, Julia, when you said you were fed up with it. This isn't funny anymore. We actually have been invaded.
Yeah.
And Starmer, you solved this immediately. You posed the question to the audience. Once the lawyers have got hold of this campaign by Starmer and Macron, effectively we're letting the whole of Kashmir in because they're all related. Because once lawyers get hold of it, it'll be not only blood relatives, it'll be people that I believe to be a relative, and my auntie's milkman's horse.
Yeah, and my in-laws, and and each of those people will then, and again, that's the thing, I just don't understand, just because you know someone in this country, you speak a smattering of English, that you have a right to come here. I just find that utterly bizarre. I don't even begin to know where they start with that.
Yeah, but the bit that solves it is that immediately, because of the danger to the boats posed by fishing, we end that. And Macron, who wants to torture us, and the punishment beating expression you use is quite right, we just have to say, as a nation, we'd rather starve to death than... seriously, we have to say we will starve to death rather than carry on like this. So
well, I don't think we'd have to come to that, but yeah, we should. Yeah, again, as I said, he's foe not friend, and let's stop treating him like he's a Monsieur l'ami. He's not. Thank you so much, Andrew. Appreciate that. Let's go to Phil, who's in Hertfordshire. Phil, you want to talk about the big fated reform defection of the former Conservative Party chairman, Sir Jake Berry. Conservative Party chairman to Reform today.
Yes. Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning.
Look, we've got to look at what's going on at the moment, and with the political status of our country, it's on its knees. Now, we have to accept that there's going to be Tories going to come over into the reform. Yes, they're going to bring experience with them. They may hopefully leave their bad traits behind them, but that's the Richard and Nigel and Lee, who've got vast experience, to weasel that out of them, winkle it out of them, say, right, you're with us now, not them. Why did you come to us, and what was you told to do in the Conservatives? Now, I'm hoping that they can extract some information out of them.
Well, I would have thought, actually, again, someone who'd been involved, as party chairman, who'd been involved in elections and had access to information and strategy. I mean, things would change, but they'd have information that would be useful.
Exactly.
But that said, though, you think about it. I mean, Nigel was a Conservative. I don't think he was ever a party member, but he certainly, Richard Tice was a Conservative. You could argue that a lot of reform is kind of, well, everyone says it's to the right of the Conservatives. Well, I mean, to me, it's just what the Conservative Party used to. I mean, these the views of reform are remarkably mainstream from where most people see it. Our entire political spectrum just shifted massively to the left in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think you're right, Julia. And it's not hard to sort of go down the centre and be on the same views as reform.
Yeah.
But what I would like to say to people is, I've been hearing people say, "Oh, well, the Tories are coming over. We don't want them." Hang about. Do you realise how bad we're in the trouble that we're in with the political status at the moment? We've got to change it.
Yeah.
We've got to change it. And my answer to that is what have you got to lose? What do we have to lose? Things can't get any worse.
Yeah, I think we can agree. That said, a lot of people said that about the Tories the last election. Well, I'm not going to vote Tory, I'll vote for reform. But they said, well, you're going to get a Labour government. They said, well, how much worse could it be? Ta-da! Now, I knew it would be bad. I didn't think it would be this bad. But, I think a lot of us accepted that was what was going to happen. But my view was the Tories needed a punishment beating to understand what they should be doing. I'm not entirely sure they have got the message. 11:33 is the time. Keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. Anything you want to talk about. Up next, going to talk to former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell about the fact it pays more to be on sickness benefits than to do a minimum wage job, and that doctor strike that's starting 5 days later this month. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. Philip, I'm planning any hospital treatment or need to see a doctor at all in the next month?
Well, no, I'm not, thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Yes, it would be postponed if
it would be postponed. 5 days of strikes from the 25th of July. That's what was announced by the Doctors' Union, the British Medical Association, after doctors voted in a ballot to go back on strike over their pay demand for a whopping 29.2% pay rise. That's what they say is necessary to get them back to, in real terms, where they were in 2010, before austerity, before energy prices going up, massive inflation and all of that. We're going to see some 200,000 appointments likely to be cancelled or postponed as a result of that strike. Well, let's talk about that with Stephen Dorrell. He's a former Health Secretary. He's also a former chair of the NHS Confederation. A very good morning to you, Stephen.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much. Do the doctors have a point? They're saying that on one of the, I can never remember which one it is, but one of the rates of inflation, they actually are, 29% worse off than they were in real terms than they were in 2010. And on the others, they're only 4.5% worse off. But they're saying, why should we have taken a pay cut in real terms? You've got a shortage of doctors. You can't recruit new doctors. You can't retain the doctors you've got. We want a pay rise or else we'll leave. I mean, that's quite a strong argument to pay them pay rise, isn't it?
Do they have a point? My answer is no, they don't have a point. Use the statistics they themselves used. Last year, they said they were 35 points behind where they had been in 2008. They got a 22% increase. 35 minus 22 is, 13. I don't understand how they therefore need 29% this year. It doesn't work, does it?
Even on their own maths, they're not happy. And I think a lot of us were pretty surprised when they went out on strike, the year before last, about asking for that 22% pay rise. And I think perhaps even more surprised when the new Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, came in and with the agreement of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, because you don't get the money otherwise. Here you go. Here's everything you've asked for. And they seem to assume that, well, that'll keep them happy. Off we go. And yet, I think within a day, the BMA said, but we'll be coming back for more. And now they have.
And Lord Derby, if you remember, issued a report at the beginning of this year saying one of the key issues facing the health service is that there's a lot of extra money gone into it, of which the money for funding pay settlements last year was a large element of it. A lot of extra money has gone into the health service, but productivity has gone backwards. Yeah. Now, I'm strongly in favour of the health service paying all its staff, incidentally, not just the doctors, all its staff properly. But I don't think it's good management just to pay up without asking how this is going to work for patients.
This is the issue, isn't it? Because they basically shut down the NHS for about 6 months back in 2020. No other country did that, by the way. We took years to get, not just to get back up to speed in terms of the amount of patients who were getting seen, but also crucially to actually deal with some of the backlog. And of course, patients coming forward in the last few years and in future years are going to be much sicker because they didn't get that health checkup, they didn't get that cancer treatment in time.
You don't need to put that into the future, Julia. That's the here and present.
That is happening right now, but it's going to continue to happen. It's not just a one. It's not going to be, done and dusted, now we've moved on. But why do you think we are not seeing as many patients being treated? Is it because, is it bad management, which is what I would suspect it is? Is it because doctors are all burnt out and stressed out? I don't know why all doctors are burnt out and stressed out. They weren't all working on COVID wards. I walk into my local hospital, I walk into my local GP surgery. There's often barely anyone in there. They don't appear, I realise there's stuff going on behind the scenes, to be rushed off their feet. So what's going on?
Well, the answer is that individual clinicians working incredibly hard are stressed out, burnt out. That is true. Is the system as a whole using the commitment of the people who work for it in an efficient way? Absolutely not. And the people who are the expert witnesses on that are the clinicians themselves, who feel that their time isn't being used properly. And therefore, it's a leadership and a management issue to ensure that the extra resources that are being made available, incidentally, not just to the health system, also what we need to think about, I always say when I come on your programs, We need to think about the linkages between the hospitals, the primary care system, the community health system, and the social care system. If we put money in the wrong place and do the wrong things, we shouldn't be surprised if we don't get the outcome we want.
Yeah. That said, I mean, I do get a bit fed up with this idea all these people are really stressed out. I mean, I know they're not paid, you know, they're not earning city money, they're not being paid millions and bonuses and all of that, but they're earning a decent wage. I think I'm very relaxed about doctors being paid more, not just because I'm a doctor's daughter, but these are really highly skilled people. I think we should encourage some of our brightest and best to go into this field. We're going to need them. And again, as I said earlier, I do think that they should be paid more than the tube drivers who drive them, or train drivers who drive them to work. I think that would be not unreasonable. But this idea that you're highly, highly stressed out doing the job you've chosen to do, I mean, why don't they all go on the sick as well?
Well, individual. Look, I wouldn't wish to take away from the fact that the current context in the health service does place unreasonable strains on individual clinicians on individual days. That's beyond dispute, I think. But what is also beyond dispute is that we haven't done enough to use the extra money given to the health service as effectively as possible across the health and care system to make it more efficient. And by efficient, I mean delivering better outcomes to patients.
Yeah, that would be a mind-blowing idea. As we've always known, the NHS, you know, it's actually very good value for money. The only thing it's not very good at is keeping people alive. We tend to die, and we're more likely to die of pretty much all the major illnesses and diseases than anyone in nearby countries.
And we're talking because that's today's story about doctors' pay. And I agree with you. I'm strongly in favour of moving to a world where we pay doctors more and we celebrate the success with doctors. What I'm not in favour of is creating heroes of doctors and forgetting the clinical teams they lead and the non-clinical staff on whom they rely.
Oh, absolutely.
The health service has to treat all its employees properly,
absolutely.
Not just the doctors.
That said, again, they talk about, you know, losing pay over the years. Well, you know, so did pretty much everyone else. I mean, you know, they think people in the private sector have been living the life of Riley since 2010. They're living in a fantasy land, aren't they? Let me also ask you about sickness benefits, because again, these extraordinary stats that are from the Centre for Social Justice, pointing out that if you're a universal credit claimant and you're not working, and you're taking the average housing benefit, which again is hundreds of pounds a week, and you're getting a personal independence payment for ill health, and we know we've got hundreds of thousands of people doing that now, you will receive back in years' time, 2026, 27. £25,000 a year. That's the total amount that you'll get. You may not get that all in your pocket because some of it's already being paid in housing benefit. That's what your income effectively is. If you, however, at the same time, in the same year, you're a full-time worker, you're earning the national living wage of £12.21 an hour, you will earn around 22.5 grand after tax and national insurance. That's your take-home pay. You're 2.5 grand worse off if you are working in a minimum wage job than if you're on sickness benefits. It's not really a mystery why a lot more people are claiming to have mental health problems and getting on sickness benefits, is it?
It's not really a mystery either that people on minimum wage who are trying to afford housing for their families and trying to establish themselves in their career pathways, that's the economics. It's not surprising that those people conclude, quite rightly, on the evidence, as we're always being told we need to look at the evidence, on the evidence that the system isn't working for them.
Yeah.
And that's the key challenge. Actually, it is a challenge, absolutely it's a challenge for welfare policy, but it's a challenge much more broadly than that for economic policy to deliver an economy that delivers decent living standards to the people, to the porters in the health service who aren't part of the doctors' dialogue, and to the rest of the economy who rely on minimum wages to try to bring up families and afford housing and all the normal parts of life.
Absolutely. Stephen Doyle, appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram's listening to all of that. It's just about fairness, isn't it?
It is about fairness, and there isn't any whenever you've created a welfare state where it's better for people to be on benefits than at work. There needs to be something done to properly encourage people back into work, to stop people claiming
I think force. I'm really fed up with this carrot idea. I think force, and you were talking earlier about You know, okay, workfare effects for, you know, we'll find a job. We'll find a job for you, but you're going to be doing useful community work. I mean, God, the amount of rubbish in my street and the graffiti and the stuff around. Yeah, let's have people doing that.
Local councils don't have enough money to keep on top of it themselves, so we're paying people in the community at the minute taxpayers' money. So get them to do it. Yeah. And if there's a mess in the area, if they don't go out and they have to, you can electronically check that they're going out and doing it. Then they just don't get the benefits. It's not difficult.
Yeah,
it's not difficult.
Works, but we're not talking about people who are severely disabled or severe mental health conditions. But the number of people who are now going on, it's 1,000 people a day, and most of those new claimants are people who are claiming a mental health issue. It used to be backache, then it was stress, now it's anxiety and depression. It's the latest fashion, but they'll come up with something new. If you clamp down on that, they'll come out with something new. But at the end of the day, if you're working age, you need to be at work.
Exactly.
Simple as that. 11:46 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to be talking about the extraordinary power grab by Lord Hermer. Who's he? Well, exactly. He's the Attorney General of this government, but he's basically made it impossible for anything to happen at all in government without him knowing about it and having the final say on it. But why? And is his main credential for the job actually the fact that he is Keir Starmer's big mate? But why should he have that power? We're going to talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Yeah, a former Tory party chairman is kind of unheard of. You know, this is a guy that literally ran the Tory party, albeit it was over for a short amount of time. But he was a long-standing cabinet minister. He was, you know, a very close ally of Boris Johnson, and you know, he's. I don't like the word mainstream as such, but you know, he was a sort of big fixture in the Conservative Party. Yeah. This is some fringe person, so I think it's a really interesting sort of bellwether of where the right in this country is.
DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. We're coming up to 11:50. Let's talk right now about Lord Hermer. No, I'd never heard of him until very recently. He got into the news, didn't he, as the Attorney General of this country when he was very much implicated in basically the sell-off for no good reason. Sell-off, it's kind of, well, the giving away and paying for the benefit of it, of the Chagos Islands, in particular the renting back at great expense, many tens of billions of pounds of our own taxpayers' money, of the Diego Garcia military base on the Chagos Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean. He's a big mate of Keir Starmer's, top human rights lawyer, apparently. Not quite sure, though, why he seems to think that he should have a veto over all government policy. It's bad enough when the external lawyers do it. But extraordinary guidance given to government lawyers by Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and seen by the Telegraph, has shown that he has handed himself an effective veto over all government policy. Well, let's talk about this right now with former Solicitor General, that's Robert Courts, KC, who joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. So this is a document that was, it was originally, actually the last time it was written was by Suella Braverman when she was in the Conservatives and she was Attorney General. This is a document that he sent out to to all of the lawyers working within government, and goodness me, there are a lot of them. And what has he said that has raised concerns?
Well, there's three things, really, and it is quite an extraordinary document. It represents a massive power grab. It represents a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of a government legal officer and of the role of lawyers within the system. Firstly, it represents a massive power shift between ministers and civil servants because of this, what's been called the snitch clause, which is the requirement for civil servants to report to the Attorney General if they think ministers are about to break the law. The problem is that being an effective minister is all about assessing legal risk. You have to look at the risks of something happening.
Yeah. Are we allowed to do this?
Are you allowed to do this? But above all, the thing is, Julia, what you've got to be doing is representing your democratic mandate. You're elected to do things.
Hold on a minute. I'm going to write that down. I think we should definitely tell prime ministers and ministers that. That would be a good idea if they started doing that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the guide. That's what I always live by, and that's what we always did in the last government. That, you know, I may be a lawyer, and of course I am, but as a government legal officer, you're sitting in a place between being a lawyer, but you're also a politician.
Yeah.
And it's why it's quite a tricky job to do. And Lord Hermer, I'm afraid, is doing it spectacularly badly. Yeah. Because he hasn't come to terms with the fact that he is a politician. He is there to represent the people of the country and to understand what it is they want.
Well, you said you've got the snitch clause. What else has he done?
Yeah. So the second thing is this mention of international law. There are 23 mentions of international law now, and he has raised it onto parity with domestic law and has required ministers not to instruct Parliament to go against international law. But the huge problem with this is that there is no Parliament in international law, so you can't change the law. It doesn't follow a democratic mandate. Parliament is elected.
Yeah. I mean, again, we only obey international law that we've put into effectively our national law, surely. I mean, our Parliament is sovereign, surely.
Yes, well, our Parliament is sovereign, that's our system, and so it should be. But the problem with international law is it gets set in stone. I mean, if you take the refugee conventions, of course, which lie behind much of the illegal immigration debate, they haven't really changed since the 50s. They are fundamentally out of date. It is extremely difficult to change them because it requires unanimity. That's the treaties.
Yeah. But also, kind of one of the reasons of having elections is that you can change the law. If we're saying somehow that any law that was an international agreement that was laid down in the 1950s or whenever, or even 3 years ago, that that is like it's just that whoever God, I'm hopeless with my royals, but it's a tablet of stone, and those are the commandments. Well, that's not how we live in this country. What's the third thing?
Well, you just want to say exactly right. That is exactly the problem. It bakes into domestic law a set of progressive left-wing views, which that's really what it's all about. It's about the politics rather than
exactly.
Law per se, but you went right to the heart of the matter there. And the third thing is this assumption that all decisions will be litigated and therefore to proceed accordingly. Well, that's just government by paralysis.
So basically, there'll be a legal, whatever we do, there'll be a legal challenge. So we probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, that will be the assumption that ministers will be operating under. But when you're sitting there on the other side of the table, either in transport as I was and then as a government legal officer, you're always getting submissions, decisions which tell you there's a legal risk. Well, of course there is.
Yeah.
But your job...
But you won't do anything. Now, but this is the thing. I mean, this is... I mean, particularly the snitch clause. Like, you're a civil servant, in another department. Anything the Home Secretary or the Foreign Secretary does, you come and tell me about it. I mean, this is a little bit McCarthyite, isn't it?
It is, because what you have to do as a minister is to sit with a situation where the law is often not particularly clear. You've got to apply the facts to the law, and that's the bit that everybody misunderstands. Law doesn't... You said a minute ago about how the law is not a tablet of stone. That's exactly right. It gives you principles. You have to apply the facts to the principles, but as a
or is there something... is there something more sinister going on here?
Well, Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer are cut from the same cloth. They are both North London liberal internationalist lawyers, and the progressive norms that system bakes in is what they believe in. So that is exactly what they want to do, is to ensure that soft left liberal progressive order is something that is baked in across the entirety of government.
Which it already is. And by the way, I mean, you were bigging yourselves up in the Tory government. You were just as bad. You allowed the lawyers to have their say, didn't challenge that stuff soon enough, and didn't didn't do.
I mean, as one of those lawyers, I wouldn't actually disagree with that.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is a reality, isn't it? But I mean, if this is what he's written. He's the senior law officer in government. Every legal advisor in the government and civil service or not is going to have to go along with that. If the Prime Minister says, yeah, that's fine, that's now what happens. So we are talking about a government that's going to be in paralysis.
It is a government that's in paralysis, but it's even worse than that because it's ruled by lawyers. There's a much misunderstanding. We all follow the rule of law. It's one of the great things about this country, but the rule of law comes from your democratic mandate. It doesn't come from what lawyers want to do. And that's the big difference. We'll be living even more than we already do. You're absolutely right.
And we already do.
Country faces is ruled by lawyers rather than the rule of law.
Thank you so much. Beautifully explained. Robert Courts, KC, is a former Solicitor General in the last Conservative government. Thank you for joining us. Philip Ingram, look, this is a real concern, isn't it? But this is people. He's not elected. He's a peer, this guy, Lord Hermer. We didn't elect him, and he's in an elected government, but he thinks that, again, more unelected people, not just civil servants, but lawyers, should have more say, not just outside government, not just an unappointed, not an unelected lawyer or judge somewhere else, but within government. They should be stopping, the Home Secretary or anyone else from doing their job. We've had this enough with the Tories. This is going to be even worse.
Well, and it's putting everything through one person, and I've just got alarm bells ringing. There's something not right about that. And if you put someone in there who's going to get complete oversight to everything at every stage that's going through government,
and they wouldn't normally do that. They wouldn't normally be aware of everything, unless there's a problem.
Then that person is in too much of a position to be influenced outside and everything else. And
you genuinely think that could be a security concern?
I genuinely think there's a huge national security concern.
But hold on a minute, the Prime Minister gets told about everything. Number 10 advisors do.
Yes, the Prime Minister does. Number 10 well, the Prime Minister gets what's been staffed to come up to the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Not everything that's going through, and that's being staffed in different departments. Because Lord Hermer can then potentially use his influence to direct what is going on at lower levels.
And why do you think he wants to do that?
Well, I don't know. There's no real logic behind it, because he can influence things before it gets to the Prime Minister.
And we're already seeing, in terms of, Chagos Islands, it's been driven by him, absolutely driven by him.
And some of the cases that he's taken on historically, again, raise question marks.
And not the taxi rank basis. He's taken them. He's
taken them pro bono. Jerry Adams, and a number of other terror-related cases and other things that would raise your eyebrows.
You have some concerns.
I have some concerns.
Very, very interesting. As a former senior military intelligence officer, I would take those concerns seriously. Hey, if you want to come on the show at any point, Lord Hermer, I'd love to chat with you. Maybe we could have a little trip to Mauritius together, where you seem to really like those people, handing them on money. Anyway, lots more coming out. Love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. All the subjects we're talking about. Up next, going to be talking to the wonderful Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, about this one-in, one-out policy, what he thinks of it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Really appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much for your company. Right now, we're going to be talking about, the one in, one out plan that's going to be agreed, a deal that's going to be agreed between, we're told, Keir Starmer and President Emmanuel Macron. Right now, probably they're putting, the dots on the I's and crossing the T's at that summit. At 3:30, we're going to get an announcement from the two men. But given that, let's be honest, Macron has got Starmer over a barrel, I don't think we can be very, very, very sure it's going to be a deal that's in our favour. We are set to return just 50 Channel migrants to France a week under the trial run of a one in, one out basis, and we're going to get 50 back. I'm not entirely sure why that's in our interest, or really if it can be scaled up. And by the way, we've got way more than that coming every single day. Nigel Farage has just pointed out in a tweet that he wrote just an hour or so ago that he's been seeing one boat with 70 illegal migrants being escorted into British waters even just today. So we'll be talking about that. Now, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's absolutely fabulous to have your company. I'd love to hear from you as well on any of the topics we were talking about, but particularly that one in, one out deal. What is your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and texts, of course, are charged at the standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about how at least one pub a day is going to close this year as costs rocket. It's feared that around 5,500 jobs in breweries and in farming could be lost in the knock-on effect. The British Beer and Pub Association has called for a business rate cut for pubs, still trying to mitigate the damage, not just of lockdown and the economic downturn and all the extra huge costs on all businesses, but they particularly hit the hospitality sector. I'm going to be talking more about Greg Wallace, as friends of the sacked BBC MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace have doubled down on claims that his autism is partly to blame for his inappropriate behaviour. He's been accused of dropping his trousers, groping women and all the like on the set of MasterChef and in the corridors behind. According to one source, Wallace has autistic hypersensitivity, which results in him having an oddity of filters and boundaries, and apparently means he can't wear underpants. So when he takes his trousers down, he exposes himself to junior female members of staff. Of course it does. I mean, really, these people have no shame at all, do they? Coming up, we're going to be talking to the brilliant Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. Just some breaking news for you, though. 4 people have been arrested by police investigating the cyber attacks targeting M&S, Co-op and Harrods. A 20-year-old woman and 2 men, one aged 19, one aged 17. 2 men aged 19, apologies, and 1 man aged 17 were detained in London and the West Midlands this morning by officers as part of a National Crime Agency operation. They were arrested under suspicion of Computer Misuse Act offences, blackmail, money laundering and participating in the organised crime group activities. Bearing in mind, we had a huge hit. M&S had to stop online orders for weeks. Customers faced empty shelves after the cyber attack on the retailer earlier this year. They say they're still going to be dealing with the after effect till October. Co-op and Harrods are also targeted by hackers in April and May. A big question mark is whether or not any payments were made, any ransoms were paid. Certainly, the chairman of M&S refused to answer in a committee the other day. If you won't answer about whether you paid a ransom or not, you paid a ransom. They normally do. Philip Ingram MP is former senior military intelligence officer and is still with us throughout the show. Thank you so much for joining us. On this, I mean, the cyber attack, particularly on M&S, was huge. Look, it's a staple of our high street. So many people, order stuff online. They were, massively hit. Couldn't take a single order online. The stocks in the shops were hit. They took a whopping great loss. They had insurance, I understand, worth £120 million. They went through that in a day. In a day. They rather wish, probably, they'd done a little bit more to make them a bit more cyber secure. But can you actually ever guard against some of these these attacks?
It's very difficult. You know, these the individuals behind this. You know, this is a group called Scattered Spider, which is unusual in that it's not linked to a hostile nation state. Most of the attacks have got some link back in there, and it was primarily English-speaking individuals. You can trace that by looking at the code and various other bits and pieces. So UK, US. Is where people in Scattered Spider Group are based. They've got 4 in the UK, and they lock down. They find a vulnerability, and because these companies are so big, whether they go in through the front door of the company or through one of the members of the supply chain, which is how I think they got into the companies here,
or someone who's got the password 123.
They get access in that way, and they're very good at doing it. They're very clever, and
for a lot of them, some of the people is about money. Now this happens on a grand scale. There are companies all the time, small companies, and they actually get asked for like ransom. We basically got we've got your entire business, we've got your entire system, and it's basically locked. You're locked out of it unless you pay a ransom. And often it's only like $5 grand, 10 grand. It's not millions of pounds. It's money they might be able to get. And actually, there is no other way of getting it. They're not going to be caught by the police. Again, we don't know these people. Obviously, these are arrests. We don't know, obviously, what will happen in any future court proceedings. But most companies do actually pay the ransom, and they know they do.
But they don't always get their data back if they pay the ransom. And some of these groups, especially if they're state-backed, you look at them, they're actually run like businesses. They've got HR departments, they've got maternity leave policies.
You're kidding me.
No.
It's a business.
So they run it as a business, and they franchise out to different script kiddies and other experts around the world to get in, because they're making so much money. They pay bonuses. They give holiday pay.
Are you kidding me?
No, they're run like that. Now,
it's not just a bunch of teenagers in their basement, or Iranian or Russian or Chinese hackers.
This is organised crime, properly organised, and they can run them like companies because they're based in Russia, where they'll pay tax, but the tax is a backhander to the local oligarch that makes sure that the law enforcement is kept away from them and all the rest of it. And they'll do stuff on behalf of the state.
We're in the wrong business.
Scattered Spider are different.
We need to be hackers or people smugglers. This is where the money is now.
It is. Oh, that is where the money is.
Unless you could kick a football about. Anyway, Philip, very interesting. Thank you very much. I want to get your thoughts on what our next guest has to say, because he deals with another element of organised crime, what he certainly did in his previous job. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, joins us. A very, very good afternoon to you, Tony.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Right, so right now, behind that shiny black door in number 10 Downing Street, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are at a summit. They're covering a lot of different areas, but we know the one that everyone in the country is focused on is some sort of migrant deal. Stop the boats, smash the gangs. Well, they've not done either. As Nigel Farage tweeted out today, he's just watched another boat, 70 migrants basically just sitting there being escorted by the French over to the British, and we'll be paying for them, and they'll be here forever, and they know that, and that's why they're willing to pay upwards of 1,500 quid for a trip on those dinghies. We're told that there is a deal that's going to be one in, one out. It's a trial deal. It'll start with just 50 migrants a week. It could start by the end of August, we're told. We'll see if it starts that quickly. But the idea is that 50 migrants a week will be returned to France. They'll have to accept them. And in return, we will take 50 people who are more legitimate asylum seekers, people with links to people in this country. Is it, first of all, simple question, a good deal?
Well, Julia, I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think it's one in, one out, is it? I mean, it sounds to me like about 17 in, one out. And mate, if you count the one out, that's 18 in and one out, isn't it? If you do the maths, if that's right, the figures I've seen. So this isn't going to stop the boats. It's a token gesture.
Well, no, but they're saying that this is just the trial. And I think I'm trying to give my best efforts here on behalf of the government, that their aim would be that if you put it to scale, then the fact that if you came over on a boat, you paid all that money, and if you had an almost certain chance you'll be sent back, there's no point doing that, and that stops it. So if you haven't got a load more people coming, then you don't have to be taking sending back. You don't have to be taking a load of people. So you'd be taking fewer and fewer people from France, because fewer and fewer will be coming from France. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. What's happening now is the spin machine's working in there. The deal's already been done, Julia. They've been sweeping, haven't they, bits and bobs out for the last couple of weeks on this, and so you know pretty well they'll be working out how best to put that. And some of that narrative you just put out there is going to be what they're going to say is, well, look, no one's ever managed to send anyone back to France before, and look what we've done. Look, we're sending. And hallelujah, you know. But I mean, and I just want to make the point. I mean, I worked in AMOS for many years, Julia, on all versions of the Dublin Convention. So if anyone is listening who says, "Oh, well, it'd been all right if we'd have stayed in the EU," we never, hardly ever got the French to take anybody back. It's not about having come from France. You had to prove under the Dublin Convention they claimed asylum in France.
Yeah.
The only people that could tell you that would be the French,
and they wouldn't tell you. Well, that's it. Yeah, it's an illusion, isn't it? But again, the illusion is also when Keir Starmer, said,
"Come on, look, we've never." And the French current government are not interested in a safe third with us, because Macron's line has always been to kick it up the road to Brussels. The EU don't like us because we've left. Any deal that they will be selling this is, oh look, we finally get the Brits to take some people here that the Brits currently have to take under their one out bit of it. So I think it's all. I mean, I'm glad we're speaking to the French. We have to speak to the French, and actually operationally, Julia, I did speak to them, and the guys on the ground are all right. Actually, but they're not in charge of the policy. The policy is driven by things like this, and they will get operational instructions which will go back from the French into their internal ministry down to the police, saying what they're now going to be doing that they're already doing. So I'm afraid I'm pessimistic. I don't think it's going to be a deterrent, and I fear we're going to end up in a worse position than we're already.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, look, if there's only a small number being deterred, it's the same as the Rwanda deal when it's only a small number before scaled up. You've taken enough risks to get from your godforsaken country to cross the Med to France. You've got to France. You're taking the risk getting on that dinghy on the busiest shipping lanes in the world. You're probably willing to take the risk you're not going to be deported. One of the things that Philip Ingham mentioned earlier was that there'd be a new market for the people smugglers, which would be rent-a-relative, because the asylum seekers, the people who are claiming they've got a right to come to Britain, well, they'll need a relative in Britain. Well, I've got an uncle in Bradford, I've got a cousin in Leicester or wherever, and that's what they're going to claim. Well, people smugglers will be paying people to claim that they are their relatives, won't they?
Yeah, well, so safe and legal routes will never work in France. That will just attract more people to France from across the Schengen zone in hope and expectation that they're going to be able to get a permit to come over here. All kinds of stories will be concocted to try and get them on that list. Yeah. And disappointed applicants will still head up to Calais and get in a boat, and we'll still end up accepting them, I'm afraid, Julia. So that won't work either. Yeah. My line. My line's always been the same. They should have given Rwanda a chance. They should have at least given it a go, because we can't control what the French do. We can control what we do. And if we could have ever got the legal framework right and started putting people on planes to Rwanda with media out there filming that happening, I reckon that might have had an effect. I don't think this one will.
But only in effect if it's on a grand scale. We know what works because Australia has done it. You never set foot on our shores. You never get to come here. End of. They dealt with it within months. The problem was solved. There's no reason why we couldn't do that.
Exactly, Julia, but I can't see that happening under this government. No. They were elected on a ticket to abolish Rwanda, and they're passing legislation which is primarily to do exactly that. Yeah. So I'm afraid I'm a little bit despondent, but who knows? We might get some smashing new announcement, Julia, and we'll be back on tomorrow saying how wonderful things are.
I'm always going to give credit, and I've tried to put their argument that, again, it's a trial. The numbers that we're talking about are a trial and all that. But at the end of the day, even if we did get, say, these people who were, again, legitimate asylum seekers, but they're already in France, they say, I don't see why, because you speak a bit of English and you know someone in Britain, you've got a right to come to this country. I just find that utterly bizarre. But they'll be bringing their families, and we know this. It's going to be, mum, dad, grandparents, great aunt, cousin this, second cousin that, the dog, the kids. We'll end up with, you say 17 in, one out, and we'll end up with another 15 from their family as well.
Well, if you're a refugee in the UK listening to this, you can go online and you can already bring family over. You can get a family reunification visa. So we are opening the door up to people that currently can't get a visa, Julie. That's what we're doing. I don't know what this criteria is going to be for this one in, but we are definitely going to be admitting people that currently are inadmissible, which worries me because we've got enough problems as it is with migrants coming across already.
We absolutely do. Can I just let you know some breaking news this morning? The Coast Guard and Border Force have been responding to what they call multiple small boat incidents in the Channel. A spokesman for Border Force said HM Coast Guard has been coordinating a response to multiple incidents involving small boats in the Channel this morning. And UK Border Force vessels have been sent as part of this response. When you used to be the head of the UK Border Force, tell us what would be happening.
My thoughts are with them, Julia. They were my people. They're not anymore, but we're a big family, really. We had a reunion yesterday.
Lovely.
We were chatting to one another like you do, essentially the Border Force are very, very professional at saving lives. We do really, really well at that. We didn't actually join the Border Force to do that, but we've got new vessels, we've got life-saving equipment. Their primary brief is to pull people out of the water, make sure they're safe and well. We do that very, very well, and we do work with the French actually on that. They were in touch with them. So if you're talking about stars for safe rescue and bringing people ashore, making them well, we're really up there with world class at doing that. My thoughts are with them though, Julia. It's tricky out there. It's really tricky when you get these sorts of numbers. You've got so many dinghies. You get full
on a hot summer's day like this. They're going to be out in force.
So you get 2 or 3 boats. Got 200 on the deck. What are you going to do? Go back? Oh, 1 minute. There's a shout. There's another one up the road. There's 300 on the deck. How many they're throwing up? You've got vulnerable people on there crying, screaming. It's horrible, horrible. And the Border Force handle it really, really well. Julia, I think people need to know that.
No, I think they do. And the key thing here is, and again, it's easy for people to say, push the boats back. You can't. These are flimsy dinghies. Someone will jump in the water and then you've got a disaster. There is a job and there are maritime rules about saving lives. And we are a civilised nation. And I'm sorry, we cannot expect people, the RNLI, the Navy, the Border Force to not save lives. Of course, that's what, there's men and women like yourself that would do. However, do they, when you had a reunion, you talk to those people, do they get frustrated that they are basically now a taxi service for illegal migrants, as well as doing their incredibly heroic and important work? But they are acting as a taxi service, bringing people, largely unidentified men of fighting age from often war-torn countries, coming to our shores. Does that bother them?
Of course it does. They're just like the man in the street or the woman in the street. Yeah. They probably listen to your show, Julie. They can't talk to you. They're not allowed to under civil service rules. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
Of course they're frustrated, but they can only operate within the law. They cannot put ministers in contempt of court. That's the worst thing you can do. So, don't blame the Border Force.
No, absolutely not.
You're going to go at the Border Force, we're a taxi, so a bunch of screaming liberal. No, we're not. We're a law enforcement agency, but we need a law that enables us to enforce. That's what they really want. They quite like to detain people on arrival, screen them properly, and deport them from the country as illegal immigrants. That's what they would like to do. But you...
They can't. They can't. That's not government policy, effectively. I just want to end this with, we've talked to you so many times about this. And again, let's talk to the people who actually know about this, who've dealt with it on the ground. Clearly, our government hasn't got a clue. Clearly, the last government didn't have the will. This lot definitely don't have the will. What would work, Tony?
Removal's deterrent. Start pouring concrete. Build detention centres at Manston. No 48-hour throughput and into hotels. Keep people detained and get removals deals done, either with Rwanda or other, and get tough on these countries that are refusing to take people back.
Yeah, how are you going to persuade Iran or Afghanistan to take people back, though? How are you going to do that?
I'd send them to Rwanda.
And then they have to go to Rwanda?
Yeah, and if they can't, if there's a country that simply cannot, for whatever reason, they might well get asylum if they're coming from there anyways. Send them to Rwanda or somewhere that will take them and process them and guarantee non-refoulement, all in the Safety of Rwanda Act. But they left that too late, the last lot. They brought that in lastminute.com. And then when we were ready to go, they called an election.
Yeah, and the election was called deliberately before it would happen. Tony Smith, I put you in charge tomorrow. Today, I'd definitely like you there in Downing Street saying, no Prime Minister, that will not work. Thank you as always for joining us. I know we're just like, thank God someone knows what they're talking about. Philip Ingram, your response to that?
Yeah, well, see, part of the reason why the Rwanda scheme didn't work was it was lawyers of the Lord Hermer ilk and his supporters that were delaying it and trying to stop it because it was seen as a political football that they could build on, and that's where the Tories then thought this is too dangerous, so we'll call the election. If it had happened, there needs to be something that is a deterrent that stops that pull factor coming into UK. Even Francois Macron is saying that. The UK's got too much of a pull factor.
Yes, well, I was hoping, we were talking on the show about this yesterday, that, Starmer might actually listen to his, his bromance buddy telling him the pull factors. We've been telling it. Again, I don't think in any way that you're going to be able to stop the push. You're not going to be able to smash the gangs. You could arrest every single person involved in the gangs today, and tomorrow they would appear. You can confiscate the boats. They will find new ones. When they started taking the boats, they started putting more people on the boats, for goodness sake. They know what they're doing, these people. There's too much money to be made, and there are too many bad people willing to exploit people. And there are too many people who want to come to this country. And what you need to do is make us not, as a French deputy called us, the El Dorado of Europe, where people come out. You think, but they're not living a nice life. It's a better life than a campsite in Calais, and it's a life where you get given room and board, and you will never be forced to leave.
A big detention camp that they can see from the White Cliffs of Dover as they're coming in, with a big sign on top of it saying, this is where you'll be accommodated until we throw you out.
And then you can bring your family too. And by the way, small point, when they do start deportations, even if they're on a mass level, I wonder how easy it will be to find some of the people who are on the list. Because we've had this problem before. They don't just suddenly appear at the, the asylum hotel. If they say we're going to start deporting people en masse,
they disappear.
Gone
surprise,
in a puff of smoke.
But of course we know their name, and no, we don't.
No, we don't, because they didn't actually have an ID when they arrived. I mean, it's almost like these really, really clever people don't think this through, isn't it? Again, there are lots of people with lots of degrees and titles and all of that. You would not trust to go and buy a pint of milk from the local Tesco.
I'm going to wind you up now. Maybe we need a national ID card.
What does no? Oh my God, I didn't realise I'd invite Tony Blair to the sodding studio. Why do we need a national ID card?
Because they'll never get one, and therefore they can...
I'm sorry, in the whole of Europe, you can literally buy a fake national ID card for like 20 quid. Yeah, so it doesn't work. All you need is employers. Oh, he's got me going now. All you need is I refuse to live in a country where I'm required to show ID. It's none of your sodding business who I am if I'm not breaking the law. Oh, he's smiling at me now. Right, I'm going to take him on in the break. Hi, Tony Blair, if you're watching, do come on. 12:23 is the time. Give us a call. Love to hear from you on this 0344 499 1000. Anything else as well, have your say. This is Talk.
A former Tory party chairman is kind of unheard of. This is a guy that literally ran the Tory party, albeit it was over for a short amount of time. But he was a long-standing cabinet minister. He was, a very close ally of Boris Johnson, and he's. I don't like the word mainstream as such, but he was a sort of big fixture in the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
This is some fringe person, so I think it's a really interesting sort of bellwether of where the right in this country is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you so much for your company. 12:26 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and we're going to talk in a few moments' time about Greg Wallace and that BBC report that's due out. But basically, it might be a report about his behaviour when he's been on the BBC, and it's bizarre claims about autism being a reason why he can't wear pants and why he keeps exposing himself to women. Utterly bizarre. We're going to talk about pubs closing at the rate of one a day. I mean, we've seen how Jeremy Clarkson has kind of exposed the difficulties for farmers, and then added to that with exposing in the fourth series on Amazon Prime about dealing with running a pub, and I think you can sort of understand why. We'll talk about all of that right now. Let's get your texts and calls coming in thick and fast about all the different topics we're talking about. Lots of texts about this Channel Migrants deal. Sandy says it's pathetic. They are legalising illegal immigration. Yep. Julie says this whole idea is just a smokescreen. They have no intention of dealing with the migrant invasion. They just want you to stop talking about it. So they're hoping you're stupid enough to buy this one in, one out tosh. I mean, nailed it. Nigel says all should be returned so they wouldn't be able to get here without France's silly borders. Jonathan says, I've no doubt most of your viewers' reactions will be, but it's only 50 because most of your viewers don't understand the word pilot or the phrase trial run. Yeah, because we're all stupid, Jonathan. We're not as clever as you. Yeah, we've been discussing that all day. What are the odds that the trial run is then going to be expanded to the scale that is actually going to deter people? I would say, Jonathan, very, very, very low. But obviously I don't really understand that, or any of my viewers or my audience, do I? Because we're all a bit thick. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Mark says Keir has lost the party, and the other one, Macron, is just hanging on for a couple of years until he's kicked out. Eddie says in and out, so just moving them around in the hope it appears they're doing something. How about we address how they're able to enter Europe in the first place? A very, very good point. Let's get to some calls now, actually on different topics. Interesting, Miranda's on the line in Cumbria. Miranda, you want to talk about Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and what's been called a power grab, where basically anything that happens in government must be reported to him.
Well, I do think all you have to do was Google Mr. Hermer, Google Keir Starmer, head of the Department of Public Prosecution, and the CPS at the moment, and it will show you where they all started from, who Lord Hermer has represented in the past. And I do think that they had no intention, Mr. Starmer, when he came into government, to actually do anything. He just came in with a load of political ideology whereby he was going to dismantle and do as much harm, and Lord Hermer as well, because they're best mates, do as much harm as they possibly could do, i.e. the Chagos Island, and just remove British sovereignty. And that's all about. I don't think he's even bothered about the welfare bill. I don't think he's bothered about any of that. I think.
I think he wants to keep the welfare, but even the reform bill he was putting through was a waste of time because Labour want everyone on the payroll. That's what Gordon Brown did with working tax credit. Just put everyone on the payroll and then they'll vote Labour.
Well, I don't know, but do these people, do you honestly think a lot of people who are on welfare actually bother to go and vote anyway?
There is that, but a lot of, again, what Gordon Brown did was people who were actually working. It's get a bit of money from the state, just have the state in charge of everything. At the end of the day, Keir Starmer thinks that the lawyers, particularly human rights lawyers, and the state and the technocrats, bureaucrats, whether they're in Westminster or whether they are in Brussels, preferably Brussels, know better than us. They fundamentally despise ordinary people who they think are below them. That's their starting point.
They seem to despise any sort of normal working class people. And I think anybody, even when people say they're middle class, they're working class because they all go out to work. They really just don't like us, basically. And it doesn't matter how hard you work. And we're irrelevant, really. They have their lives, and they really don't care. I think they are all aware. I think Keir Starmer is aware of how normal. They don't like to. They pretend that they don't know how we all live. They're the elite, and really, they have to go to work.
To be fair, he is the son of a toolmaker. Oh, so sorry, the man who ran the factory. And again, I don't care about anyone's background, but why are you pretending? It's like me saying, my parents were working class, but I was born middle class, because my parents had gone to university and had professional jobs. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of what my parents achieved. I don't understand why people feel the need to sort of make something different about their own lives. But he just, they're all fake. They're all fake. But the main is they despise the average British person in this country, and they think that they are awful right-wing, racist bigots, and they think that we shouldn't have borders. But totally out of touch with what most people think.
Shoulder, because Kim was at Leeds University. I think they hate the institution. I don't think they're like Oxford or Cambridge.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
So.
That's funny. Oh, that's funny. Oh, Miranda, great call. Really interesting. Thank you so much. Completely different topic, completely different call now. Angie's on the line in Plymouth. And Angie, you want to talk about Greg Wallace?
Oh, well, not really, but I have to, I fear. Yes, Julia, I've spoken to you many times before. Fantastic show as always. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for calling.
No, I just want to say that I've got 6 grown-up children. Our youngest, Ollie, is severely autistic. And I just want to very quickly start off by stating the fact, because the retired head of year have to deal with these struggles with parents who are making claims to this, that and the other all the time. Autism is not a psychological condition. Autism is caused by physical brain damage. Ollie was born perfectly fit and healthy when he was born, and I don't want to go into the details of what I think caused it, because that's coming in my book, which I'm writing currently. But what I want to say is that I'm absolutely sick and tired of people like Greg Wallace, who behave in the most disgraceful way, then suddenly say, I couldn't help it, I'm autistic. Let me tell you, my 34-year-old beautiful autistic son has never dropped his pants at anybody.
Funny that.
Funny that, isn't it? And also, do you know what? Although he was autistic, we never, ever use that as an excuse for any bad behaviour. If he behaves incorrectly, speak to Kevin O'Sullivan. He knows Anthony Ollie from Plymouth. Speak to Kevin later on. He'll tell you the story. But, we have never made excuse for any bad behaviour on Oliver's part, and we might have had to go about it in a different way with our other 5 children because of his autism, but he has always been punished and made to take responsibility for any bad behaviour.
It's not an excuse. No, that's a really fair point, Angie. Again, we're going to talk about Greg Wallace in just a couple of moments.
Can I just very quickly tell you?
Please.
Ollie was 34 on the 30th of June. We had a family do, and then we had a big barbecue last Saturday with lots of his friends, because he goes to various day centres, and they all behaved absolutely beautifully, and we had a wonderful day with all the parents who devote their lives to love these very special human beings, and to have that segregated by that awful
Absolutely. But also, again, I think also when you get people who, again, everyone's just claiming, I've got autistic spectrum, I'm on this, I've got this, and getting onto the sickness and welfare benefits when they don't have, again, autism can have a severe impact on people's lives, and needing help for that and we should be providing that help. But again, when other people claim they're on the autistic spectrum, but you don't need a Motability card because of it. Angie, thank you very much indeed for that. Very heartfelt. 12:34 is the time. Going to take a quick break, and then we are going to be talking more about Greg Wallace, and we'll talk more also with Philip Ingram about those cyber attacks on Marks and Sparks, Co-op and Harrods. 4 people have been arrested. A woman, 2 men and a teenage boy have been arrested by police investigating the cyber attacks, which massively hit those stores. Huge, millions of pounds of losses. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Let's talk about Greg Wallace. Let's talk about appropriate behaviour because a new report is out and it's basically been leaked already into behaviour of Greg Wallace when he was working on MasterChef, other shows. Worked for various different production companies. Lots of them shows were on the BBC. Big star on the BBC. Woman after woman after woman. Originally 13 women, then we're told another 50 people came forward. I'm told all women about his inappropriate behaviour. But we're not talking about the odd little perhaps dodgy joke. We're talking about some occasions women claiming they have been groped by him, about him exposing himself repeatedly to women. Really inappropriate language being used on the set, in front of other people and privately, often with junior female members of staff. Now, I'm very much a believer in people are innocent until proven guilty. He's not gone to a court of law, but he has been sacked by the BBC. They believe that his behaviour has been unacceptable. But a lot of people are raising the big question mark now. It's like, how did so many people know about his behaviour? How did so many complaints get made and nothing get done by the BBC? Should the BBC to be held for account as well as Greg Wallace?
Of course there should be. The production team should have turned around and, the first time an incident happened, because, in studios and stuff, you're observed most of the time. It's very rare that you're together where you're not.
Well, you won't allow me to be with you on your own,
Well, exactly. We've got the team behind the window here watching us just to make sure. And as soon as someone sees bad behaviour, they just you take them one side and say, Greg, not good. Even
if you don't mean anything by it.
Exactly. But the behaviour that you walk past is the behaviour that you accept, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and becomes compounded. And this is what's happened here. Well, he's at fault, but so are the management team.
Let's talk to a former BBC producer, John Mayer, who joins us now. A very good morning to you, John.
Julia.
Thank you for joining us. It has been extraordinary. Greg Wallace has always denied that he's done anything wrong. He's pointed out that actually the report exonerates him of some of the worst things he was accused of. And a lot of people will say, come on, no smoke without fire. Enough people have come forward. He's claimed also that he's suffered a heart attack. He's also claimed that he has been diagnosed with autism. And we've even had friends, we're told, friends of Greg Wallace, who are claiming that his autism means that he has sort of perhaps behaviour that appears to be inappropriate, but also apparently on some level means he doesn't wear underwear under his trousers, which I find, I think we're putting that one a stretch. But I mean, has he got any defence?
Julia, let's start with a bit of medicine. I've looked up what the adult signs of autism are. You find it hard to understand what others are thinking and feeling. You get very anxious about social situations. You find it hard to make friends or prefer to be on your own. You seem blunt, rude, or not interested in others. You find it hard to say how you feel. You take things very literally, and you have the same routine every day and get very anxious if it changes. It doesn't say anything about not wearing underwear and dropping your pants in front of women, does it?
No, indeed. And also, so his autism didn't appear to affect him so much that he couldn't do a job which involved a lot of change, dealing with a lot of people and all of that. I mean, I don't think anyone believes it. But the key thing here is there's a big difference, isn't there? As a lot of his defence has been, look, they hired me as an ordinary bloke, cheeky grocer, bloke, I'm going to make, I'm old school. And then the rules changed. Everyone went too PC. But we're not talking about that. I mean, I love banter in the office as much as anyone. I'm of the view that most people do need to be shouted at, including myself on a regular basis. But apparently we're not allowed to do that. But the key thing is, it's not about that. We're talking about someone who has gone way over the line.
Paid bucket loads of money for the last 23 years. Bucket loads of money to be the cheeky chappy. Look at the costs of the BBC. The BBC's in a dilemma here, aren't they? Each of those shows costs about £250,000 to make. They've got 24 on the shelf. 24, 8 weeks worth of MasterChefs. What do they do with them?
Well, they show them. I mean, they should show them. I hate this whole someone has been outed as not a very nice person, and so now we have to pretend they never existed. I mean, I think that's absurd and unfair on John Turode and everyone else involved. But here's the thing. How much responsibility goes to the staff of the production companies, the senior figures there, who are, we told, numerous women, And women who are very high profile, they're not trying to make a name for themselves. People like, Kirsty Walk, saying that they thought their behaviour was inappropriate. People who appeared on shows, their behaviour was inappropriate, that they spoke up about it, they complained about it to protect other women. Nothing was done. The BBC must have known. This appears to have been an open secret at the BBC. And like with numerous other men before, from Jimmy Savile onwards, nothing was done. How much do we need to hold the BBC to account?
Well, you need to hold the production company to account, Banijay and Shine. They must know, because they're making the programmes day in. They're making 24 programmes.
Yeah.
And they've had the complaints. And in fact, one person who complained went to Banijay and they said, it's all right, you've not been Jimmy Savile, you're over 16.
Yes, there was a girl complained that she'd been groped, or no, she'd been exposed. I think I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, something totally inappropriate in a workplace.
Yes, and they said you've not been Jimmy Savile, so
Yeah.
that's all right. That's a lot. I mean, how far it went to the BBC, none of us know.
But the thing I find bizarre is the BBC is someone, and not the people who work there, and the people who sort of support the BBC, and the papers they read, like The Guardian, they are very, very, very quick to censor and to completely cast into the wilderness anyone who, I don't know, they believe misgenders a trans person, i.e. correctly gendering them, or doesn't bow down to, Black Lives Matter. They think that people should be cast out of Lawrence Fox's career completely ended for saying that he doesn't believe most British people are racist on Question Time. Out beyond the pale. But apparently not that bothered by someone who is accused of repeatedly showing his meat and two veg and groping young female members of staff. That they don't have an issue with.
Julia, it's a problem of talent, It's a problem of talent. Let's call it the Hugh Edwards problem, shall we?
Yes.
The talent becomes too big and untouchable, and they can't touch it. And then the talent becomes too valuable. I mean, look at those figures: £250,000 per show, and they've got 24 shows on. So what are they going to do? Are they going to scrap it? Are they going to use AI to get rid of him on screen?
But again, that's Stalinist. It's absolutely mad. Should heads roll other than Greg Wallace's? Although it'll roll better than most. It's nice and smooth.
Well, as you well know, Julia, in the BBC, assistant heads always roll, not heads. So yeah, I mean, if I were the BBC, I'd be asking Banijay for my money back. But for the shows and don't show them.
Yeah, well, and there must be a clause in their contracts about bringing the BBC into disrepute. I mean, the BBC brings the BBC into disrepute every 3 minutes, so I'm not quite sure another company can do it worse than them. But but this is a perennial problem, and it does always seem to be powerful, famous men can basically get away with doing anything, but they get away with it because an awful lot of other people cover up for them,
and the institution doesn't take them on. Right from the institution should from the beginning say, look, what your last guest said, this is unacceptable behaviour. We will not have it. Stop it.
Yeah, you do it again, you're out
the door. Yeah, you're out the door.
Absolutely.
And nothing wrong with that. There's plenty more talent out there, Julie. And you don't have to.
Exactly. Find one who doesn't take his pants down in the middle of the office. I mean, that would be that'd be a minimum level requirement, wouldn't it, John Mayer? Great stuff.
Somebody who doesn't have autism in inverted commas.
Yeah, exactly. Former BBC producer John Mayer, apologies for talking over there. Philip, I mean, this is just extraordinary, isn't it? And again, yet another abject failing to the BBC. They have not learned. They never, ever learn again and again and again. Look, some of them we can't talk about because they're actually court cases ongoing. In Channel 4 have had the same issues as well. I think that ITV have had the same issues. You think Philip Schofield, and again, and a lot of these people have an image on air of being, they're very nice, very nice. But it is amazing. I mean, I know from someone who I've worked with very, very closely. We had an issue in an office where a quite a big name, relatively a well-known name, but not like a big name, who was behaving inappropriately, texting some female members of staff inappropriately, and it was inappropriate, unnecessary hugging and touching that made them uncomfortable. They were told, "Can you stop doing it?" But word goes to the boss, and the boss calls them in and says, "Have you been doing this? I understand you've been doing this. A lot of people, a lot of witnesses. Yeah, well, I won't do it again." No, of course you won't, because you're never going to be here again. You're out. You're out. I don't want people like that. I don't. Now that's being a boss.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that is about looking after your people. And again, this is the thing, it's the double standards that so many people at the BBC have, where they will happily see someone's career ruined, their life cancelled, because they didn't use what they would believe were the correct pronouns for somebody.
Yeah.
But not someone who is getting their mean to veg at in front of a 20-year-old.
No one should be above good behaviour, and if your talent, it doesn't mean that you're any more important than the most junior producer.
Don't worry, my team tell me that every day.
Exactly,
Don't you worry.
I know. I can hear them whispering in my ear. This is what you're to say.
Give it to her. Go on.
Exactly, or junior runner that's there, because they're all parts of you're keeping the whole machine going. And if you break one bit of it, the whole machine will fall apart. Yeah. That's what's happened with MasterChef. And
but again, you sort of think, I feel sorry for like the other people involved in MasterChef who haven't done anything wrong, like John Trobe. You think, but you must have seen it.
Yes, John Trobe must have done. He must have heard the rumours.
These things are always known by everybody.
Exactly.
The thing I find strange, and again, people always say to me, "Oh, yeah, but you're the woman you are." You know, bearing in mind, you know, Michael Fallon and the knee, you know, the hand on the knee. People say, "Yes, but it's different. You know, you're who you are now, and you're in a position to speak out." I mean, I was like this when I was 16. Yeah. When blokes on scaffolding, I can vividly remember being 17 years old and some scaffolders in my street go, "All right, darling," you know, down, you know, as I walked past, and I went, "Oi, come down here." And I said to them, "I'm not having it. You know, my name's Julia. If you're going to be working here for years, my name's Julia. If you want to say good morning, Julia, that's fine. I'll say good morning to you. Love you to speak. But I'm not having you shouting about my boobs or anything else. That's not going to happen. I'm going to get you all sacked." I was like, I've been like this all my life. And if more people just said, no, not putting up with it, we could stop this.
We can't stop it.
Because the good men don't do it.
Yeah, and you stop it at the first instance, because as soon as you let it go past, and this is why we see so much inappropriate behaviour across defence and other government departments, it's because people in positions of responsibility don't stop it at the earliest stage.
But it seems a lot of the people who are doing the wrongdoing are the people in positions of responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
12:48 is the time. Up next, going to be talking about, well, we've talked so much recently about pubs and pub banter and people not, you know, don't see something that offends someone in a pub. Well, you'll be lucky to find a pub very soon, with one pub a day closing because they simply cannot keep their doors open because of the cost. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Well, I found the whole spectacle, frankly, obscene. I'm actually less exercised by the cost of the banquet than the fact that we wheeled out our finest royals and traditions to welcome this guy who has done nothing other than stitch us up for a period of many years. We have stuffed Macron's mouth with gold, and in return, he has basically made fools of us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. And for legal reasons, just had a conversation about the BBC and Banijay, the production company for Greg Wallace as a master chef. We've got to read some statements from them. Banijay UK said, while the external investigation is ongoing, we won't be commenting on individual allegations. We encourage anyone wishing to raise issues or concerns to contact us in confidence. And a BBC spokesman said, Banijay UK instructed the law firm Lewis Silkin to run an investigation into allegations against Greg Wallace. We're not going to comment until the investigation is complete and the findings are published. There you go. There you go. There you go. In the bin. Right, let's move on. I read it out. That's all I'm required to do. Let's talk about pubs, because we're going to struggle to find a pub to actually have the sort of banter in that we could actually end up getting arrested for, or the landlord could be sued for, so we could actually still have a life if the current trend continues. We are losing a pub a day at this rate. This is what the British Beer and Pub Association are saying. They're saying an estimated 378 venues will shut down across England, Wales and Scotland. That will lead to more than 5,500 direct job losses, but many more, and the losses to local communities more crucially. Let's talk to Dawn Hopkins, who's Vice Chair of the Campaign for Pubs and a licensee of the Rose Pub and Deli in Norwich. Good morning to you. Oh, sorry, good afternoon to you, Dawn.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I've literally just finished watching Jeremy Clarkson's Farm, Series 4, where he's moved from, starting a farm, starting a shop to starting a pub. And it was heartbreaking to see how many pubs were for sale. Pretty much any pub was for sale in the area, because the publicans are saying, we cannot make ends meet. And these are like well-to-do areas. We know pub after pub is closing. What are the specific reasons that mean it makes it just impossible to keep the doors open?
One word really is overheads. We just can't keep up with the rises that we're having to face. Obviously, as everyone knows, that the budget with the NI and minimum wage rises didn't do any business any favours. But with the pub industry totally struggling as it is, that's really hit us hard. We've had an increase. We used to have, the previous government gave us a 75% discount on our business rates. That's gone down to 45%. So we've had those increases as well. We're still dealing with ridiculous prices for utilities companies, which we get no cap or help with whatsoever.
And you have to have the lights on and work the fridges and use a lot. But I mean, lots of businesses are struggling, lots of shops are struggling as well. But the pub industry, hospitality generally, was much worse hit than any others by lockdown and the rules on hospitality. So even when you were closed down for a long time, and even when you were allowed to open, the spacing was such, and you can't queue at the bar and all that, meant that you just couldn't actually make a living. You couldn't actually even break even. So you're still struggling, a lot of pubs, just from what happened in 2020, aren't you?
Well, absolutely. And, a lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us took out bounce back loans to help with that period, or the period coming out of lockdown. But we weren't able to bounce back. We almost straight away went into the cost of living crisis as well. And then as I've outlined, all the other costs that we're facing. So it's been really, really difficult. And we can't see at the moment, have the government say they support pubs. We have a lot of rhetoric about a beer duty and a penny cut that's going to save pubs. It will not save.
That doesn't touch the size. But there was also an issue, wasn't there? How many people now don't go out? People got used to having a cheap pint at home, a cheap gin and tonic at home, and going, oh, I'm not paying pub prices. I can't afford pub prices. Of course, you're having to, it's not the same cost for you. You have to have someone to, wash the glass and buy the glass and pay the rent and all of that. All of those things on top, which means that's why it costs more for you to sell. But people have lost the habit of going out, haven't they? An awful lot. I mean, I see in London, Friday night, pubs can be half empty.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a change, and the lockdown was part of that. We have to take into consideration, while pubs and publicans are struggling, so are a lot of our customers. So they've had a lot of their income is being really, really stretched. So it's a constant battle to think, well, I need to put my price point here, but are these people coming in going to actually be able to afford this? It's really difficult. So and I spend a lot of my time thinking of different events for people to come through, and reasons for people to get off the sofa and come out to us. But you know, it really is a struggle.
It really is. And I know a lot of pubs moved into food again. You had the smoking ban that might have hit a lot of custom doors. Although for me, it made pubs more enjoyable to go to as a non-smoker. But the prospect of the banter police now, so it wouldn't even be somewhere you could go and have a laugh and a joke and a bit of banter. That would make it even harder. But what could actually be done? What could the government announce? I mean, not that we're expecting anything good to come out of this coming budget. What could they do that would make a difference?
Well, like I say, let's not worry about this beer duty thing, because that just puts millions into the pockets of global brewers. It will do nothing for you and me in the pub whatsoever. We need to really look at business rates. The pub industry is the only industry in the country that the business rates are based on their turnover rather than their premises and location. So the better we do, the harder we try, the better we try and make our pubs for a community, the more we get charged. Yeah. And, there's been talk of there being a reform for years and it just hasn't happened. So we really, really desperately need to do that. It would be lovely to, get that discount back as well, because that really was a lifeline for a lot of us. So a hike in the business rates has been really, really detrimental. One thing that would help beyond belief is if we could have a cut in VAT across the whole of hospitality. Yeah. That would give us breathing space. It would stop, the constant prices going up for people. So there's several things, meaningful things that can be done by the government. And I just don't want to see this, we've done beer duty. No, that's not supported.
It's not going to work. But again, what people forget, it's not just the taxes and the costs and things that we get, from pubs. There is a huge community aspect to pubs in many areas. It's where people go and meet. It's where people learn to socialise. I mean, certainly, when I was a teenager, obviously looking a bit older than I was, it's where you learn how to drink, you learn how to socialise, you have to interact with different generations, and you get to know people you would never normally get to know. They're so important, and the reality is that once a local pub has gone, it's probably gone for good.
Yeah, that is true. And the social aspect, the community aspect is so important. If you remember back to lockdown, people were desperate for pubs to open. It's not because they were desperate for alcohol, because we could get that from the supermarket or online.
I still remember taking my husband and my brother. We went to a local pub on the day they opened. We were we were running to the pub, and their look on their faces with that first pint sitting in a pub. Never seen people happier. Again, when you're gone, we'll all regret it. And a key part of our tourism industry as well. Well, look, we'll fight for you here. We're on your side. Dawn Hopkins there from the Campaign for Pubs. She's also the licensee of the Rose Pub and Deli in Norwich. Get there today. Go and spend some money. Philip Ingram's still with me. Honestly, the British pub, it's a really big part of our culture, our history, and it's a big part of our tourism appeal as well. But this is crazy to let this industry die.
It is, and it's a fantastic central point for so many communities across the place. I'm on a one-man campaign to try and keep them open.
But you're doing your best.
But there's only so many I can get to.
He can't drink it all. Please help him. I know Maddie likes a pub. Ian Collins is here.
I like a nice pub. I don't like a crowded pub.
Oh. Yeah. I worked in a lot of pubs.
Did you?
I was a great barmaid.
Yeah.
I was a very fast barmaid.
Did you say
I wore
get
very
out
short
of my
skirts? They were very short. My favourite bit was 11:15.
Yeah.
Get out!
Only you would do that very.
No, because people don't realise.